Today we are going to be having this conversation with our revolutionaries from Cuba. As you know, honorable members, sometimes we do allow other countries through the representatives here in South Africa to come and engage with the portfolio committee. We have done that in the past with many other countries and will continue to do so. And as you remember, there has been always in the portfolio committee some divergent ideas in as far as the understanding why South Africa must continue to have a relationship, including financially, to contribute through the Africa Renaissance Fund to the livelihood of the Cubans. And if you remember, I did say it, I think it's sometimes last year, that I think at some point we need to have the department here of DERCO and the Cubans themselves so that we can settle this matter. You will also remember that in the debates in Parliament, this matter will always be raised against some of the legitimate challenges that are facing our people in South Africa, like water, schools, primary school nutrition issues. And there are some who argue that instead of us continuing to work with the Cubans through the Africa Renaissance Fund, rather those monies should be going towards problems of poverty, of inequality, and unemployment. That's basically what led to us saying, Ambassador Rodriguez, we would want Cuba one day to be here in the committee. It is historic, honorable members, that we have Cuba here today. Just before we get into substantive matters of the day, I'm going to check with the administrator whether we've got apologies. Administrator, acting. As you know, honorable members, Lubabalo is not here because he's still not well. He's ill. Over to you, Selina.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning to Ambassador, and good morning to all the members of international relations, and good morning to everybody in the meeting. Chairperson, I have the apologies. First apology is from the Minister, Lamula, and Deputy Minister, Muraka, and DG. They all attending SADC in Durban. And I also have the apology from the Deputy Minister Botes. He is in Cuba attending official duties. I also have the apology from Honorable Kumbaka attending CPA conference in Malawi. Honorable Douglas is here. Honorable Musa is attending Chief Whip meeting, but he will come later. Also have the apology from Rev Michel. He is not here. I thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Selina. From DERCO, we've got Ambassador Bona, who is responsible for the Americas. You are welcome, Your Excellency, Ambassador. We also have from the department the ambassador, deputy ambassador designate. I was elevating you. Zahir Amin, you are also welcome from DERCO. He's en route to Brussels, honorable members. He's en route to Brussels. He's gonna be representing the country there. We also have Ms. Sempo from ARF. You are all welcomed here today. From the left, I'm going to introduce the members of the committee. And as soon as I'm done, because I don't want to make a mistake, we will need to have everybody introducing themselves so that I don't make a mistake and leave others out, and that might be reported on social media platforms as inherent attitude politically driven by supranomics philosophy. So I don't want that to happen. Honorable Muela, will start with you. Introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and greetings to His Excellency Ambassador and all excellencies that are present in this meeting, officials from DERCO, and all other civil society organizations that are here, Friends of Cuba and everyone, and all honorable members. My name is Honorable Muela Mogodu Samuel Muela. I'm the member of this committee representing the African National Congress. I will be very much grateful to have engagements with the Cubans. Thank you very much.
May I proceed, Chair? My name is Ronalda Nalumango. Let me just first start by greeting His Excellency, the Ambassador Rodriguez of Cuba, and all other excellencies that were mentioned by our esteemed chairperson, all members of DERCO, as well as all honorable members that are present today. I am again, and I'm placing emphasis on again, because it's not our first engagement with the Ambassador of Cuba. Looking forward to have fruitful deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. My name is Honorable Harold Belzano Kluter. Also allow me to greet His Excellency, the Ambassador of Cuba, also the political advisor of Cuba, and all the excellency and DERCO present here. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members of the committee, honourable guests, members of the media, Your Excellency, the Ambassador. My name is Ryan Smith, and member of the Democratic Alliance on this committee. Thank you.
Good morning, Shlalo. Your Excellencies, honourable members, guests, my name is Morgan Chetty, and I represent the Democratic Alliance.
Good morning, Your Excellency, Ambassador Rodriguez, and all the other excellencies in the room. Good morning, Chairperson. My name is Dr. Khanyisile Litchfield Shabalala. I'm representing Umkhonto Wesizwe in this committee, and it is good to have you in the room.
Good morning, Ambassador, Your Excellency Rodriguez, chairpersons, and as well as our ambassador and deputy ambassador, and from DERCO, and all my fellow colleagues. My name is Honorable Wesley Douglas, and I'm a representative of Umkhonto Wesizwe on the IR committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, Ambassador. Good morning to all honorable members and excellencies. My name is Ngobile Mhlongo. I represent the Economic Freedom Fighters, and I'm the head of international relations of the EFF. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll start from the back here, left, going that way, up to here.
I'm Yusuf Chikta. I'm from the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Thank you for inviting me.
Good morning, all. It's Martin Jansen from the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Thanks.
Morning, Chair. Morning, Ambassador. Morning, honorable members. My name is Jeremiah Tynsma. I am the convener of the ANC in the Western Cape.
Good morning, everybody. Melvin de Bruin, COSATU Provincial Secretary.
Good morning, Chairperson, Ambassador, and everyone present. My name is Motlatsi Tsubane, the Provincial Chairperson of COSATU.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a representative from PMG. My name is Karuna Rangan.
Good morning. My name is Manuel from PMG. Thank you.
Parliamentary monitoring group. Okay. I'll tell you a story, not today, which happened in a Mafikeng High Court 2 years ago about the parliamentary monitoring group. Okay.
Good morning, Chairperson, Your Excellencies. Jason Felix from Media 24.
They are saying you are too quick.
Oh, my apologies. Good morning, Your Excellency, again. Jason Felix from Media 24.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Walter Manganyi. From Long March to Freedom. I'm a managed director there. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Andy Samatanda, Executive Secretary to the Chairperson of the committee. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Akida Isaacs, a focus member. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning to everybody. My name is Thomas Grapper, and I am here with Focus. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ansaf Mohammed. I'm a representative of the Friends of Cuba Society Focus.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lutfi Omar, and I'm from the Salt River Heritage Society.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yola Khokhwana. I am a member of the Cuban Doctors for South Africa. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, His Excellencies, honorable members, friends and comrades, I go by the name of Mtanjiswa Bengeza. I'm from the Cuban Doctors for South Africa.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable Chair, Your Excellency, Honorable Chair. I'm Anele Chambu. I'm the chairperson of Cuban Doctors for South Africa, which is a humanitarian organization created by Cuban trained doctors. Thank you.
Good morning to the chairperson and to the honorable members in the House. I'm Christopher Solomons. I'm from Robben Island Museum.
Good morning to all the honorable members. My name is Rifle Hector. I'm from Robben Island Museum.
Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, the rest of the organizations that are here, my name is Supra Mahuma Pelu. I'm the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Cooperation. I'm going to do just brief remarks because the main person who must speak is Ambassador Rodriguez here. One disclaimer I need to make is that Ambassador, 20 years ago, it's exactly 20 years ago, it was in 2006 when I was still the ANC provincial secretary in the province called Northwest, we undertook a revolutionary journey to Cuba. We were led by the then Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, to go and understand the contexts of struggles 20 years ago between South Africa, Cuba, and geopolitics in general. And one of the things that I learned and took away from the Cuban Revolution, based on the interactions on that era, was the CDRs, Community Defenders of the Revolution, which are part of the Cuban approach to their own revolution and how they are embedded in society through the CDRs, Community Defenders of the Revolution. Having learned that lesson and coming back home, I wrote a paper where I then introduced in my province what is called Revolutionary Frontline Troopers. So the Revolutionary Frontline Troopers is more or less like the CDRs, Community Defenders of the Revolution in Cuba. Because by then I had understood why the Cubans took that particular approach and how it helps them to defend the revolution. So I thought that if we introduce, at least in my province then, the Revolutionary Frontline Troopers, we will be able in our province to know what happens in every street in a township and be able to know what happens in every village. And thereafter set up systems of communication where, as the leadership of the province, we will be able to communicate effectively for our people, and our people, vice versa, will be able to communicate with us. One wouldn't have developed that idea had one not been given an opportunity to go to Cuba and learn how the revolution is being defended in Cuba, and how the resilience of the Cuban people has been able to survive many, many decades of an onslaught which came from the West, particularly led by the United States of America. We were inspired when we were there by the teachings that came from Jose Marti and many other revolutionaries that made sure that the revolution of the Cuban people ultimately triumphed. So, Your Excellency, we are welcoming here today, and we recognize the fact that the Cuban people made a choice. You made a choice to fight the invaders in your land, and ultimately you triumphed. You made a choice not to follow the capitalist system. You made a choice to follow the socialist system, which today in Cuba, when you look at it, your life expectancy is one of the highest in the world, which is at almost 8 years. It's because of that system. Because of this system that you chose, today as we speak, literacy in Cuba is at 99.5%, which means that the system you chose, the system you pursued, and the system you practice and embed among your people, there's critical evidence to demonstrate that it is successful. But no matter the good that came from the system you chose, you continue to face an onslaught. And that onslaught, as I said earlier on, when we were in Cuba, we were told that generally the onslaught from the US is referred to as the Yankees, the onslaught from the Yankees. That onslaught continues until today. And it has gotten worse. This is despite empirical evidence, which is a consequence of the choice you made to follow the socialist system. So the capitalist system is basically anti what you have made as a choice in ideological terms, and it can be demonstrated. South Africa is one of the beneficiaries of the choices you made. President Nelson Mandela and President Fidel Castro reached an agreement, I think it's around 1996, where there was an agreement between South Africa that there will be exchange programs. One of the exchange programs will be in the health sector, generally. So we have benefited as South Africa. Today we have got many doctors in our country who are from the periphery of South Africa. Those who are from deep rural areas where they had never hoped that one day they will be able to be educated to become doctors and therefore also contribute to the life expectancy increase here in South Africa. So we are beneficiaries, not only of the agreement between Cuba and South Africa through President Nelson Mandela and President Fidel Castro, but we are also beneficiaries of the triumph of your own revolution. When the people of South Africa pursued their own struggle here against apartheid and colonialism, you did not say you are only looking at your own struggle, but you said we will make a contribution, militarily and otherwise, so that the struggle of the people of South Africa against colonialism and apartheid can succeed. Somehow it succeeded in 1994 when we got two freedoms. We got the freedom for all of us to vote and choose the government of our choice. The other freedom that we got was to have our own constitution, which we adopted in 1996. Today, as the current generation in this country, we still face an enormous challenge of owning the means of production of this country, the economy. It continues to be the most difficult, sophisticated revolution that we have to undertake. Unfortunately, we haven't had what I characterize as the necessary emergence of the supreme generation that can take up this matter with much more vigor. We are not yet there, and my hope is that future generations can rise better than we have done to deal with this matter of the lack of ownership of the means of production by the majority here in South Africa. We see here in South Africa, Your Excellency, the majority is getting more and more disintegrated, almost on a quarterly basis. There's some new disintegration of the majority here in South Africa, and therefore it's getting weaker and weaker. So Swart Gevaar, which was conceptualized many years ago as a necessary evil which had to be fought and to be defeated, the apartheid system came up with a Swart Gevaar, which meant that the unity of black people is something that you had to make sure that we defeat. So we can conclude that so far it's quite clear that we are limping as the majority in this country. Like I said earlier, we continue to disintegrate as the majority. And I always say to people that yes, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, and we are building a non-racial society in line with the Constitution of the Republic. But the reality is that as a society here in South Africa, one of the things we will have to embrace, and we can't change it because it's objective reality, is the fact that the Africans are a majority. And they should be taking charge of all aspects of life in South Africa, not at the exclusion of other races, but Africans being at the helm and total control of all aspects of life, and the rest of those people who are here in South Africa subjecting themselves to the authority and the leadership of the majority. As I said, unfortunately, that majority is getting more and more disintegrated, is limping, is getting more and more weaker. We are fighting against one another. There's no synergy among ourselves as the majority. So your struggle and your resolve to be part of the South Africa struggle and other countries here in the African continent we must assure you that as long as we are still on this planet, some of us will continue to strive to make sure that one day in this country, the majority unites. One day in this country, the majority must be in charge of all the affairs, particularly the economy of this country. Because when you look at poverty here in South Africa, it has got color. Poverty in South Africa has got color. It's not non-racial. Yes, we want to build a non-racial society, but poverty has got color. Is designed. It did not fall from heaven. It's by design that you've got us as black people, as Africans, still embedded in deep poverty. Even when you look at statistics that were released yesterday by States SA, it confirms the obvious that we know. So as you continue to be part of our revolution here in South Africa, continue to engage us on when are we going to unite as the majority without taking away the right of people to form and belong to their own political parties. But belonging to different political parties doesn't mean that you cannot unite, because you can still belong to different political parties but work together as the majority. Then the majority must pull everybody along so that they can feel that they are still part of this country. Unfortunately, the minority is ruling over the majority in this country. So, 20 years ago when I was in Cuba, one must say we were inspired. But I want to request you, Your Excellency, 20 years ago when we were there, it was around midnight, and we were about to prepare to leave Cuba. There was a Kumbi that came, and we were told that we must get into the Kumbi urgently. We are going somewhere. We were not told where we are going. And because in Cuba you take orders, you don't ask questions like here. People have got many rights to ask questions. I'm not saying you are a dictatorship, but you have a society that listens. We got into the Kumbi. We were taken to a building, and 10 minutes later, President Fidel Castro arrived. He said whatever he said for 2 hours, 30 minutes. There were pictures that were taken there, and we were told that we'll get them the day El Comandante is no more. So I'm just requesting you that if we can get our pictures. Your Excellency, that is 20 years ago. I'm sure we can get them now. As you know, the Cuban revolutionaries are very strict. So one of the tokens that you can do for us, those who were there, some of those who were with us then have passed on. They are no more. So we will deliver the pictures to their families. But it was an honor, really, in our lifetime to have met with President Fidel Castro, and we were inspired by the commitment of the people of Cuba to fight the Western onslaught. Today you face one of the most and hardest onslaughts coming from the capitalist system. You are not alone. The people in Palestine are facing the onslaught from the same perpetrators. The people in Western Sahara are facing the onslaught from the same perpetrators. Here in South Africa is happening through sophisticated methods like NGOs and grants and many other things which are happening. People who are coming in, there's nothing wrong in sitting next to honorable members. Remember, you voted us to be here, so we don't have a problem if the seats are not enough. The only difference is that we are given permanent cards to be here. So you are very safe next to Honorable Lynchfield, Chabalala. and you are welcome. As you take your seats, if you can just introduce yourselves. You can ask with the sister next to you, Honorable Lynchfield. You can press the mic for her.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Toira Hofmeester, and I represent Power Generation Foundation.
Good morning, my name is Ashley Pina. I represent the First Nation People Film and Cultural.
Good morning, everyone, and Honorable. I'm Ko Her from Korea. Nice to meet you, all of you.
Which Korea?
You probably think North, but I'm from South.
Good morning. I'm Lee. Also, I'm from South Korea. Nice to meet you.
Hi everyone, I'm Shanae. I'm representing People's Film and Events Company. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John. Nice to meet you.
And you are from?
South.
Okay. Okay. We welcome everybody. So I was saying, Your Excellency, that the onslaught which is intensifying on the Cuban people is not only on the Cuban people, it's also on Palestinian people, it's also on the people of Western Sahara, some parts of the African continent. There's intensification of neocolonialism that is taking place here. And we want to say once more that we really applaud the resilience demonstrated by the people of Cuba. Continue to pursue the struggle, and one day all progressive forces of the world shall triumph. We will emerge against these onslaughts which are unleashed on those who pursue revolutions across the world. It doesn't matter the decades or centuries it will take, but one day it will happen. So victory is certain. We welcome everybody. There are other 4 people at the back there. I see one of my leaders has also arrived. We will just ask them to introduce themselves. I used to be deployed here in the Western Cape as an ANC National Executive Committee member, so there was a chairperson, the chair. So you can introduce yourselves, those who arrived at the back there.
Good morning, Chair and honorable members and guests. My name is Justin Dialindi. I am from the ANC.
Morning, Chair, and members of Parliament, and everybody in the room. I'm Vuisa Chalisiso from the ANC in the province.
Good morning, Chair, and everyone in the room. This is Andile Nganega, Provincial Deputy Chairperson of COSATU. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Comrade JJ, once a chair, always a chair. Let me just close by quoting Jose Marti. And he says, one revolution is still necessary. The one that will not end with the rules of its leader. It will be the revolution against revolutions, the uprising of all peoples and individuals who will become soldiers for once, so that neither they nor anyone else will ever have to be a soldier again. Close quote. This is Jose Marti. In summary, he is saying that the masses of our people will continue to engage in the revolution, and one day the revolution shall triumph globally. Over to you, Ambassador Rodriguez, and you are welcome.
No, thank you very much, Chair. For us, it's a real pleasure to be here today. just to acknowledge, of course, yourself for heading this, for us, very important meeting, dialogue, exchange, conversation among what we consider friends, because that's what Cuba and South Africa are. Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee on International Relations, all present here, thank you very much for allowing us your time. Ambassador Bona and DIRCO colleagues, always a pleasure to have you on these discussions with Cuba. Members of the provincial political organizations present, thank you very much. Our dear friends from Focus, who are always accompanying us everywhere we go and are very forwarding in their solidarity with Cuba. Our brothers in struggle from the Solidarity with Palestine, thank you very much. Brothers and sisters, doctors graduated in Cuba. It's always to have a pleasure to have our country people with us today. Thank you very much for being here. So it's a deep honor and deep emotion for me to accept this invitation to take part in this event, in this exchange, which brings us together on such significant days that we are living today and tomorrow. As we approach the 13th of August of 2026, a date in which Cuba and in many parts of the world there is an ongoing commemoration of the centenary of the birth of Comandante in Jefe Fidel Castro. We hope that this event will serve as a lasting tribute to this tireless freedom fighter who changed the destiny of our homeland and left an indelible mark on the history of Africa as well, and most particularly on that of South Africa. I would like to thank the South African Parliament and its Portfolio Committee of International Relations, DIRCO, and other organizers who made this encounter possible, a dialogue that will allow us to remember, reflect, and above all, reaffirm the determination to continue with our bilateral relations. I address you here today in a spirit of remembrance, historical truth, political commitment, and gratitude to a nation that, like our own, knows the price of freedom and the value of solidarity. But also to charter a way forward, tailor-made to the actual constraints and limitations due to ongoing political pressures all around the world that can satisfy in the end the will of the people of Cuba and South Africa. Relations between our two countries are not built on a short-term interest or economic convenience. These ties of our own countries were forged through genuine solidarity and sacrifice and have since been strengthened through mutually beneficial multi-sectoral cooperation. To truly understand the depth of this bond, we must look back at the historical context of the national liberation struggle in Southern Africa during the 70s and 80s, when the apartheid regime in South Africa, with explicit support of the US and various Western powers, intended to extend its dominance over the southern region of Africa. When in 1975, South African troops invaded Angola to prevent the newly established independent government to assume power, Cuba received a request for assistance by the leaders of the MPLA, the Popular Movement, and firmly decided that we should unequivocally answer that call to support our African brothers and sisters. 381,482 Cuban volunteers came to Africa to defend the sovereignty of Angola and stop the advancement of the South African forces. Of those, more than 2,400 died in the battlefields of Africa. Under the guidance and wisdom of Fidel himself, we did not surrender. We did not hesitate. We risked everything, even our own safety and security. At one point of the battles, sending most of our aviation assets to Africa and significantly debilitating our strategic defensive positions in Cuba in a time when the Ronald Reagan administration in the United States was particularly aggressive towards my country. Cuba's involvement had an enormous psychological and political impact on the apartheid system back then, as it suffered numerous defeats in the battlefields under the strategic advance of an organized African army backed and supported by Cuban volunteers with the assistance of Soviet advisors and military equipment. But this was no match for a South African regime that was also defeated in the end by failing principles and a gross violation of basic human rights. As we all know, the decisive moment, the turning point, as Mandela called it, came in the late months of 1987 and the beginning of 1988, with the historical Battle of Cuito-Cuanavale in southern Angola. There, Cuban forces fighting side by side with the MPLA fighters, the Mkoto-Wizizwe of the ANC, and the SWAPO fighters from Namibia, dealt a final blow to the South African army, one from which it could never recover. Ultimately, as Nelson Mandela said in Cuba in 1991, he said, and I quote, "Cuba's military involvement, without Cuba's military involvement, he would not be free. Cuba's contribution was paramount for the long-fought and hard-earned liberation, independence, and democracy of South Africa." And here I would like to point out that these events, spanning roughly 16 years, set the foundation for the future of the bilateral relations between our two countries. It underscored that Cuba's presence in Africa was not based on geopolitical interests, not based on an economic interest, but on principles of solidarity, humanity, and the need for the Cuban people to selflessly contribute to eliminate one of the most horrific and immoral policies ever implemented. Nelson Mandela's visit to Cuba, just a few months after his release from Robben Island in 1991, precisely on the 26th of July, commemoration in Cuba, marking the starting point of the final push for our independence, greatly contributed and outlined and defined the relations of our countries in the future democratic South Africa. 11th of May, 1994, when Fidel came to Pretoria for Mandela's inauguration, formal diplomatic relations were signed. Cuba enjoys the honor of having been one of the first countries to be recognized diplomatically by the government of the African National Congress under the leadership of Nelson Mandela. This relationship has been characterized by political trust and cooperation. One of the most intense first engagements between both our governments concluded with Cuba being able to assist the emerging democratic nation with Cuban doctors for the rural areas. It was then Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma who spearheaded this project and secured directly from Fidel a first batch of 463 Cuban doctors who arrived in different groups between 1996 and 1998. Dear Excellencies, let me tell you that today, after 30 years of uninterrupted medical assistance from Cuba, there are still 55 of those doctors who came in that initial group who have been here for a lifetime, meticulously contributing to the well-being of thousands of South Africa, spending more than 28 years of uninterrupted work. Also in this field, it is worth mentioning that the Fidel Mandela Scholarship Program began also in those days, 1987. This initiative has enabled South African professionals to train in Cuba, the majority of them coming from disadvantaged areas. I was recently very touched when I took part in this year's graduation ceremony of the last 19 new South African students, now doctors, bringing the total number of graduates in Cuba to a huge number of 3,243 South Africans trained in Cuba in medicine. These are two special programs in which Cuba's government and people feel very proud to have been able to participate. I take this opportunity to thank the government of South Africa for trusting us in this endeavor. But throughout these 32 years of bilateral relations, cooperation has also been extended to many other areas. such as human settlements development, basic education, water and sanitation, sports, science, culture, civil engineering, working with a wide array of South African counterparts who have always trusted not only the professional quality of our team members, but their human aspects and solidarity-driven way of life. These examples, as explained previously, demonstrate that the relationship between Cuba and South Africa has been pragmatic, vibrant, and dynamic, driven by mutually agreed interests, promoted and prioritized by high-level political exchanges, which reflect the depth and maturity of our ties. Today, as Honorable Baumapelo was explaining, Cuba is facing one of the most critical situations we have had in recent history. This is essentially due to the unprecedented intensification of US economic, commercial, and financial sanctions, blockade we call it, which in 2026 has reached levels that very recently United Nations Organization have described as an ongoing silent Gaza. Since January 2026, President Donald Trump's administration has declared a national emergency and effectively imposed a blockade on fuel supplies to Cuba, imposing tariffs and sanctions on any other country that sells or supplies oil to Cuba. The result has been dramatic, and allow me to give only a few examples that illustrate the actual situation in my country. In the last 8 months, Cuba has only received one shipment of oil, one oil tanker from Russia in the last 8 months. We need to function as a country 4 to 6 shipments monthly. So just imagine how scarce has become oil, fuels, gas in Cuba at this moment. Daily power cuts regularly exceed the 20 hours in many parts of the country, comes to days, disrupting economy, schools, and our own way of life. Food production has fallen by around 60%, while the prices of basic goods that are usually imported have risen very sharply. The availability of essential medicine has also fallen to approximately 30% of the normal levels that we used to enjoy in our nation. Historically, and up to 2020, Cuba's infant mortality rate was amongst the lowest in the world, only compared to first and most important nations in the world. In the last year alone, it has more than doubled. This means that newborn babies are dying as a direct result of the blockade, which prevents access to the appropriate treatments, equipment, and medical devices needed to take care of them. UN Special Rapporteur Alena Dohan has confirmed the negative impact of unilateral coercive measures on human rights in my country, stating that US sanctions have shaped the country's economy and social landscape, undermining the fundamental right to life, health, food, and development of millions of Cuba. In this context, Cuba appeals for international solidarity. It is not merely rhetorical. It is an urgent call for concrete action by the international community. We need your help by demanding the immediate lifting of this blockade and the extraterritorial measures that prevent Cuba from accessing fuel, food, medicines, and funding. South Africa's voice and action are particularly important. Its historic consistency in defending justice, its leadership in the Global South, and its own experience in the struggle against oppressive systems give this country a unique moral authority to denounce the blockade and mobilize regional and international support. In this regard, I wish to express on behalf of the people and the government of Cuba our deepest gratitude to South Africa for its constant expressions of solidarity, for its support at the United Nations, and for its defense of Cuba's right to develop its own social model. This year, 2026, Cuba and South Africa celebrated 32 years of diplomatic relations. Last May, the Cuban embassy was hosted was happy to host a modest commemoration of this anniversary, graciously attended by the South African Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Alvin Boutes, and the whole of the DIRCO team that attend to Cuba. In this gathering, DM Boutes emphasized the desire to maintain and strengthen the historic ties between our two nations. In this new phase of our relationship, taking into careful consideration the local political landscape and social dynamics, we commit ourselves to continue deepening our collaboration in areas where both our countries have complementary expertise, needs, and potential. Key sectors include, of course, health, education, as well as science, technology, and innovation. Those are the key areas that our two countries are able to cooperate more effectively. We are working hard to substantiate the relation and hope for South African counterparts to step up to this big effort. Cuba does not want handouts. It is willing and able to be a partner, as it has always been to South Africa. Beyond technical cooperation, Cuba and South Africa also share a vision of the international order based on respect for sovereignty, non-intervention, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. In a world characterized by the imposition of unilateral sanctions and the weaponization of human rights, our alliance in forums such as the UN, the Non-Aligned Movement, the G77 plus China, and other platforms of the Global South is more necessary than ever. In this year, we are marking the centenary of Fidel Castro's birth, at a time when the blockade is attempting to struggle Cuba. The examples set by Fidel and Mandela offer us a clear way forward. The conviction that solidarity amongst people is stronger than any empire, that dignity is non-negotiable, and that history, in the end, is on the side of those who fight for justice. Today is the time to act with courage and principle in the face of threats and intervention. Excellencies, I call upon all of you to reach out and help us survive as a country, help us survive as a people, the same people that helped South Africa to be free, even by paying the ultimate price. To conclude, my deep appreciation for this committee and its members for having us today, and I can only say that together we are stronger. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Your Excellency, Comrade Rodriguez. We are now at a stage where we are going to allow members to engage with the presentation, but I think I must just fiddle with the protocol just a little bit and allow our guests who are here, if they want to ask a question or make a comment, they can do that. And then we will have members, as they engage with the input, also responding to the questions and the comments. We will also have Comrade Ambassador doing the same. We will then allow the department, DIRCO, to also come in. And I will really, DIRCO, like you to get into the historical context of the ARF and why South Africa will not abandon the ARF, because it is law. It's not something that we pick from trees. It's policy which has been passed here, so that we can lay this matter of the ARF to rest. Where some people still say we're wasting money, we should be building clinics. Not that clinics are not important, so that we can deal with that matter. So that by the time we leave here today, all those who still hold the idea that the RF is unnecessary, maybe they would have been convinced that it is necessary because we are internationalists and our struggle was never, never, never in isolation, as Comrade Rodriguez has explained. So there are some who want us, now that we are in democracy, to forget completely and erase our memories, that there are lives that were lost here, blood was shed in the African continent. There are families that donated their own children to come and engage in a struggle here in South Africa, and they lost their lives. And today we are told, no, just forget about them. It's not necessary. We are a democracy now. Those lives are meaningless. When they themselves, in the quest to make sure that colonialism and apartheid triumphs, they had friends internationally who were helping them to intensify the apartheid system. And today that friendship is in economic terms. They are still keeping it. That friendship is very powerful, it's very strong through globalization and this powerful movement and control of global capital. And they are saying to us, no, you must abandon your friends. But we will keep our friends through economic ties, private accumulation of capital, and so on. So we are elected to confront the truth, so we need to confront that truth, that it can be that in humanity there are some who sacrifice, including supreme sacrifices, and later you are told that you must jettison them and abandon them and not worry at all about them. What's happening, Your Excellency, in Cuba now, especially to the children? It's genocide. Actually, it's genocidal, and maybe in addition to the genocide perspective of Israel, we might have to come closer to this one, because it's genocidal to deny children medication, and as a result they die as a consequence of decision made by some human beings who think they are powerful elsewhere. So we'll start on the left. If our guest, there's anyone who wants to say anything or ask a question, feel free. You are welcome. This parliament is a consequence of our own struggle. Yes. Right? So it belongs to the people. So you are at home when you are here. We are here because of those sacrifices. Those who want to speak can raise their hands, then I'll give you numbers. Then you will introduce yourself as you speak. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. Then we end there, then we go there. If you can also keep it a little bit shorter without leaving out the essence of what you want to say. Thank you. Over to you, number 1.
Thank you, Chair. It's Martin from the PSC. Cuba's survival and a thriving Cuba will be a huge victory for humanity and a defeat for US imperialism that's terrorizing the world. So in view of that, I suppose my question is, what is our government doing to ensure the survival of Cuba and its people? And then also, very importantly, the BRICS countries, which together make up quite a formidable force, politically and economically. What is it that they are doing or prepared to do to ensure Cuba's survival and a victory against imperialism? And I say this in the context of the US becoming increasingly desperate under the Donald Trump regime to show its own people some sort of political victory. And Cuba is viewed as a kind of a soft target, an easy target, to the extent that, Marco Rubio is now preparing some conspiracy to convince the US population that Cuba is plotting against the US. So I'm raising this because the context is desperate on the one hand, on the part of the Cuban people, but on the other hand, there's a desperation on the part of US imperialism to ensure that it has a victory against Cuba, given what's happening globally with Iran, etc., etc. So the situation is dire, and which is why I'm asking what is our government and BRICS doing to support the Cubans? Thank you.
No, thank you, Chair. Jeremiah Tainsma from the ANC. I think it would be incorrect for me to just keep quiet when we talk about Cuba. As Ambassador has correctly said, that our freedom is linked to the sacrifice of Cubans. The blood of Cubans have nourished our tree of freedom. Therefore, we can't then turn our back just because some people feel that it's time for us now to change direction. And the worst part of it all, Chair, is that it's the same people who are telling us we must now forget about what Cuba has done for us and is still doing, who are sending their sons to go and fight on the side of Israel against Palestine. So we can't then be part of hypocrisy. Our freedom did not come free. People died. Cubans died. We can't allow a situation where we are told that international relations is the purview of those who are white. And the black people must confine themselves trying to build clinics and schools. We understand our role as a country. We understand our role as an organization. And therefore, we will not turn our backs as the African National Congress on Cuba, irrespective of what the orange man tells us. We are not listening to orange people. We are a sovereign state. We make our own decisions. What Martin indicated is correct. America is trying to recoup lost ground by trying to intimidate old foes. This fight with Iran, now this blockade of Cuba. Cuban blockade is not a new thing. He's just trying to reinvent something that was there in the past to make himself relevant as if he is the king of the world. So therefore, for us, it's very simple. We are here to show solidarity, and we will take everything that we need to take to basically support Cuba so that Cuba survives. Because it is correct when we say if Cuba is surviving, it is a good step for humanity. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Number 3.
Yeah, thanks, Chairperson. And let me first welcome the input by the Ambassador. And as COSATU, we once again would like to basically confirm our support for the people of Cuba.
Reintroduce yourself, comrades.
My name is Melvin De Bruin, Provincial Secretary of COSATU in the Western Cape. And what is so sad is that you still find organizations and political parties that turn a blind eye on the atrocities that is happening in Cuba. It's so sad that certain political parties don't see the inhumane conditions those people are subjected to. Babies are dying because there's not sufficient of enough medication. And as COSATU, we are saying that it's important that these parties that are still living in a world of their own must come to the fore and ask themselves, if I'm a human being, how can I keep quiet while innocent people are dying and kids are dying on a daily basis? So once again, Ambassador, you have our support, and we'll continue to put pressure on those barbaric countries that is killing the people of Cuba on a daily basis through the sanctions and embargoes. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Number 4.
No, thanks, Chair. My name is Mutlatsi Tsubane, the Provincial Chairperson of COSATU in the Western Cape. Chair, I have a few things to raise. I'm not going to repeat what my secretary has said, but safe to say We are very worried when we see you guys debate issues here in Parliament. And you find that one would say the progressive forces within Parliament speaking past one another, more especially around this issue that we have raised of the ARF. I don't know why can't there be a common view around that as progressive forces within Parliament and deal with that thing once and for all. The other thing, Chair, is you are correct to say the majority of the people who are supposed to be united are divided. We are divided, and we can even see it here in Parliament also. Those progressive forces who are supposed to be united in Parliament in terms of what is really concerning the majority of the African people, you are divided on a number of issues, but one would understand that it's because of the perspective that those organizations are bringing to the table. But Chair, lastly, you have made mention of what you have witnessed in Cuba in terms of how the Cubans are defending the revolution in Cuba. And but I did not hear you saying this is what we have done. Those who went there, when we came back and we introduced this, and this is how that has assisted us, more especially from the province where you are coming from, because at that time we were still premier in the Northwest. Can you please tell us as to how far did you go with the things?
Thanks, Chairperson. Number 5. Okay, let's go that side. Any hand there in the middle? Sure. That's number 1. Any other hand in the middle at the back? That's the only one here. Then we'll come to the right, my right.
Good morning. My name is Carla Bernardo. I'm from the Friends of Cuba Society. Just to say a thank you to both DIRCO and the Portfolio Committee, and then the South Africans in the room who continue to remember and honor Cuba's contribution to South Africa, to our freedom, to our healthcare system, and particularly because it's becoming increasingly difficult for you to do so, and far less profitable to choose the side of justice over genocide. But just to say that despite what media may show, traditional media may show, despite what those in decision-making positions may say, the people are on your side, and to refashion the words of the undefeated commandant, history will not absolve those who choose the side of the genocide.
Are you done, my sister? Thank you very much, comrade. We'll now go to the right. The side, we'll give you numbers starting from here. Number 1, number 2. Number 3 there, the corner, and then you'll be number 4, the First Nation. Yeah, so we're 4 speakers this side. Then we come to honorable members.
Thank you again, Chair. Anele Chambu from Doctors for South Africa, which I said is a humanitarian organization that's created by the Cuban-trained doctors of South Africa. The first thing we want to say is thank you to all our leaders, to the Cuban government. I know leading a nation is a thankless job, but as the children from the poor, who are now doctors for the poor, we first want to say a revolutionary thank you to all of you. Now, as you said, Chair, Cuba produced one of the best healthcare systems. The primary healthcare system of Cuba is held all over the world. We have the blueprint, we have the secrets that the Cuban people shared with us on the ground. We know how they implemented it, we know how it succeeded. Through Doctors for South Africa, we want to bring all that knowledge and transform the Nelson Mandela Fidel Castro program from being a medical school or school-based program to being a community-based movement. We're going to do that through Doctors for South Africa. And I think when we talk about supporting Cuba, this is an opportunity to help to bring in the Cuban government to help us through oversight and assistance in implementing this initiative for the benefit of South Africans. We cannot be quiet as Cuban-trained doctors, because when we get to Cuba, we were received with open arms by Cuban families. We know their names, we know their voices, we know the pains, we know why they cry, we know why they laugh. We played with them, we grew with them. Before we left Cuba, we even hosted weddings. They've grown so much that now they got married, and we were there celebrating with them. To us, Cuba is family. So it hurt us deeply when we see what is happening right now. And therefore, we want to make this call that together, let's increase our voices against this embargo, against the sanctions. They must stop, because innocent lives are being lost. So as the Cuban-trained doctors of South Africa, we stand here in solidarity with you, Your Excellency. We stand in solidarity with the Cuban people. And we say, let the vision of Nelson Mandela and Fidel Castro not just end at the program that you said you just received the last batches of doctors, but now let us transform that into a community-based movement, a community-based organization, through establishing the African School of Medicine, of Cuban Medicine, or an Institute of Cuban Medicine in Africa. And we have that fund that we can redirect some of it into ensuring such initiatives that benefit not only Cuba, but benefit the people on the ground. And that is the dream of Fidel Castro, that is the dream of Nelson Mandela. So we are here to say, let us continue the fight, let us continue to be united, and let us not be distracted by the voices that try to divide us, and let us make sure that the vision of Fidel Castro doesn't die out. Till victory always. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 2.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you will bear with me. When I get emotional, I sometimes struggle to speak English. I'm running a risk, because this to me is quite sensitive and it makes me emotional as someone who trained in Cuba.
No problem. The parliament allows all the 11 languages to be spoken, so you can express yourself in any language.
Yeah, I like the any language. I'll start by saying, in quoting Fidel, when he says, "La revolución es cambiar todo lo que debe ser cambiado." This loosely translated in English to say, the revolution is to change everything that needs to be changed. Now, I'm quoting him because in your opening remarks, Chair, you would have said at times, even here in the People's Parliament, you sometimes struggle with passing certain laws, and some of the laws that you would have passed, they are still challenged. As revolutionaries that were elected to be in this house, you must ensure that you change views of those comrades who are still resistant in making sure that we have deliberate intention to assist Cuba. Remember, Cuba, for us, or their choice, the choice that they've made, then they are suffering as a result or as a consequences of that choice. It has helped us. For the first time in this country, we have a crisis, but a good crisis of unemployed doctors. It is because of that program. We are trying to say, no, let's have doctors employed, but At the same time, we're saying thanks Cuba that for the first time in our country, we have this kind of a crisis. And that crisis, it is helping our communities. We are benefiting, direct beneficiation of the Cuban Revolution. It's us. Not us people who studied in Cuba who are getting paid for doing their job, but the poor communities who are now having doctors. And I agree with you, Chair, to say perhaps this committee must pursue this, your last remarks, to say what is happening currently in Cuba. It's genocide. I agree with that. And if it can be concretized and then you have a program of action in challenging that. Remember, we don't have weapons. We may not be having powers to attack those who are taking Cuba, but let's try other avenues where we can then show our solidarity with Cuba. I was in Cuba about 2-3 years ago. For the first time, I've experienced what was told in stories as we're interacting with Cuban families during my stay there of this periodo especial. I've never imagined that what they were explaining in our lifetime, they can experience it again. I think, Ambassador, one day you must, when you get opportunities like this, explain or link the two, the periodo especial and the current situation that Cubans are faced with. I was there, I had money because I work here. I wanted to buy, but there was nothing to buy. And it's not because of Cubans, they have no capacity to produce their things. It's because of what the ambassador was saying, to say they have only received one shipment in 8 months. And remember, Cuba does not make electricity from coal and others. They depend on oil. So if there's no capacity to manufacture, then their shops will be empty. So even if you have your own money, you will not have means to use it. And lastly, Chair, let's all unite, all of us, doesn't matter where we come from, to make sure that we help Cuba to survive. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're coming to the last one. Oh, at the back there.
All right, thank you, Chair. My name is Walter. Manganyi is my surname again. From Long March to Freedom. I'm a manager there. What I can say, Cuba and South Africa, we are brothers. And it's a fact, and we cannot change that fact. I remember Nelson Mandela once asked in United States, why are you supporting Cuba? Why are you supporting, I forget, those, countries. But the only answer that Nelson Mandela gave them, he said, the problem that you have, you think your enemy should be our enemy. That mistake we cannot do. Even us now, is our time to support Cuba to the heat, as they did to us. They supported us to the heat. 2019, COVID, it was in power here. Each and everyone, the doctors from Cuba coming down to assist our doctors. So now, it's our turn as South African to come together, starting from us here in South Africa, coming together. We are not united, as I see. As a political parties, we are not united. We are divided. So we must come together. It's our time. And I thank Cuba, I thank this committee to be, happen today, so that I can raise what is inside of me. So Cuba, we don't have to fold hands as South African. South African political parties, let's unite. We have a lot of political parties here in South Africa, but we are not united. What is the reason of having a lot of political parties? What is the reason for that? Nijweleni. I love kutirela vanhu. Hi lava kutirela vanhu lava nga ku hluphekeni. But we are not doing that. ko tala ku vulavuriwa hi vulavula swilo leswi nga ri ku na ndzima hi fane hi vulavula swilo leswi nga na ndzima. We must say something that we mean and we follow it. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ntade Bangai. Our last speaker from the people of the First Nation.
To all the delegates in the room, I'd like to just greet all the members of Parliament, the international delegates, and the Honourable Your Excellency. My name is Ashley Pinar. I am a Khoisan leader in South Africa, and I represent the Power Generation and, as I said, our Khoisan organization as well. I want to say to Cuba that the past cannot be forgotten. I am a individual that was part of the 80s where we were fighting for our freedom in South Africa. I might look young, but I am 53 years old. I want to indicate to you that we know the relationship. I am aware of the relationship that we had at that time working with the ANC and Max Ozinski, everybody during 1994 when we experienced our first elections. I'd like to also recognize a comrade that I have been working with for a while, Mr. Melvin from Kusatu, and also the member that is responsible for having us here from MK, Honorable Member Wesley Douglas as well. I want to make mention that we are not, I know where we come from. I know what we've been through. I think what we need to get to a point to is to address what is needed. At the moment, Cuba is in need of support. Cuba is needing us to say, don't forget how we have built the relationship. I think if family never disputes how to support, family supports family. And that is how we view Cuba. I want to make mention that we'd like to build with Cuba. This is what we from the Khoisan community bring to the table. We'd like to build on what is already in place as far as youth development exchange programs that's between our youth of South Africa as well as Cuba. We also currently are working with South Korea. That is the delegates that are sitting in the room from IYF, the International Youth Foundation, and we are also working with New Zealand currently, where we as Power Generation has already established a youth movement in New Zealand as well. We would like to build on this relationship with Cuba as we build towards our ultimate goal, which I think should be the aim of all African countries in South Africa and all representatives throughout Africa, that we build towards a United States of Africa. I feel that this is the need that is extremely important from our point of view, from the Khoisan Nation point of view, that Africa needs to unite so that a united Africa can support Cuba on the international global stage. I want to continue by saying that we as a South African country also need to stand up and become vocal and publicly vocal. It doesn't actually add value if we're constantly having talks behind closed doors, but people are not aware that this strong relationship exists. When it comes to international media, when it comes to CNN, Fox News, this is where our members of parliament, our government, our president should make their voices known and say, we are not ashamed to say that we stand with Cuba. And when the United States and Donald Trump, these Mickey Mouse people, decides to view us, every time America says, hey, what is Cuba doing in South Africa? What is Cuba? And then it has an effect on us, because I watch our South African television and I see how we are represented on the international stage. And we see that it is not aggressive support. and that is what Cuba is needing at this point in time. Aggressive support against sanctions. We, as the Khoisan community, I am standing in for our organization, and I am saying to Cuba that we are also currently working with Pebbles Foam Company, which is a company from South Africa, a Khoisan-owned, and a young lady, 21 years old, that is running this company as a Khoisan owner, young woman of power, and their company has come on board to say that we, as a company, along with the Khoisan community, along with all the different political parties in South Africa, we are here to support, we are here to rally, but the company, foam company, is on board to say to Cuba that we are going to support Cuba through rallying support for Cuba, through foam, through documentary, showcasing the needs of Cuba, what Cuba is needing, and also tackling the industry, the foam industry in South Africa, dealing with the media in South Africa, and letting podcast platforms know, and letting people, especially the SABC News, drilling them, writing letters, and ensuring that they make affirmative action known, that everybody understands that Cuba will not be messed with, as if South Africa remains a rock-solid ally towards Cuba. I'd like to end and say, in the vision of Nelson Mandela, and I quote, as Ms. Nelson Mandela has spoken, and reference as you made the reference, in Mandela's words,
without Cuba, I would like to let you know, we would never be free. We can only salute Cuba and support Cuba. The day we do a stop at supporting Cuba is the day we lose the integrity that Africa must represent. And I thank you.
I thank you. I thought you were playing a clip from somewhere. Thank you very much for that. Honorable Mhlongo, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just like you, I had to look even more. I attempted to take off my glasses, thought they were perhaps misleading me, and the phone was in hand, so I was convinced it's a clip until I saw that the lips were moving, and I realized that no, it's actually him. That really helped to break the ice. Chair, let's welcome the presentation and the remarks that you made on behalf of the committee, Chair, that were made by you, and also appreciate the remarks of the ambassador. Now, Chair, there's just a few things we want to mention on behalf of the EFF, is that we must, as this Parliament and South Africa, to continue the relationship we have with Cuba, because it's a strategic relationship. It has a long, rich history between South Africa and Cuba, and we should never, ever abandon that relationship, no matter the cost, because the Cubans chose to side with South Africa when it was not fashionable to do so. We must never abandon them at a sign of inconvenience. If it means that the US is going to impose economic embargoes on South Africa for having to choose our friends, let it be. We can't be detected by the Americans who to be friends with when they themselves choose their friends. And if you look at the friends that are kept by the Americans, they keep killers as friends. They keep countries like Israel as a very good friend, and then they want to tell South Africa and anyone who wants to associate with Cuba that you can't be friends with Cuba. We must never allow the US and that Donald Trump to detect to South Africa who we can be friends with. It's something that we should never allow. I just wanted to mention, Chair, that, you know, on the passing on of President Fidel Castro, the EFF held a memorial service on behalf of President Fidel Castro. It was in Johannesburg. We took it in the townships of Johannesburg because we wanted people of South Africa to never forget the rich history between South Africa and Cuba. If you look at all the national events of the EFF, amongst the flag of EFF and South Africa, we display the flag of Cuba and the flag of Palestine, because we want the people of South Africa and the people of the world to never forget the struggle of the people of Cuba and the struggle of the people of Palestine, because our freedom without the freedom of Cuba and the freedom of Palestine is not complete freedom and should not be celebrated, because the Cubans and the Palestinians sacrificed for us to have the democracy and the freedom that today we enjoy. And you know, in previous meetings, it was questioned why would we want to continue our economic and diplomatic relations with Cuba and Palestine if it means that we're asking DERCO to allocate a budget to assist these two countries. I think that's a question that should not arise from people with moral high ground of standing, for people who've got a love for humanity. We shouldn't do that. It's like asking the Department of Health why they are only focusing in hospitals and not on water. But it's not in their competence to focus on water. There's a department that is responsible for water, which is water and sanitation. So you can't say the budget of DERCO must be redirected to build RDP houses. Then that will not. That is not in the scope of work of DERCO to provide housing or sanitation or medication. We must remember what is the scope of work of a department before we demand things that are impossible to be done by the department. So we ought to tell DERCO that we support any initiative that seeks to advance the struggle of people of Cuba and Palestine. Now, you know, the EFF chair, we draw our inspiration from the revolutionary movements in Latin America, especially from Cuba, Venezuela, and Bolivia. We should encourage these countries that they ought to continue the struggle and continue to resist the U.S. imperialism, because they've shown the rest of the world that it is possible to resist U.S. imperialism. Look at the economic embargoes on Cuba. They are as old as humanity. And look at the struggle of the people of Palestine, as old as humanity. To this day, they are standing on their feet, continue to resist the U.S. imperialism upon. And we must really say we are inspired by the people of Cuba to never give in to the lunatics of the U.S. and to continue the fight. And we must call on all peace-loving nations to challenge the economic embargoes imposed on Cuba and to open up trade relations with Cuba. We call the rest of companies of South Africa, they must start to trade with Cuba. They must look at that market. We must ask DERCO to make it possible for products of South Africa to reach Cuba, to expand on the needs of Cuba. If it means that we must get oil for Cuba to come from South Africa and then we ship it from South Africa back to Cuba, we must make any means necessary to ensure that Cuban children don't die because they don't have access to food, they don't have access to electricity, they don't have access to medication. It can't be us that support such things. We must be champions. South Africa is known to be a champion of human rights and human dignity, the same way we've done with taking the genocidal Israel to the ICJ. We must be able to hold the U.S. accountable for the sins that they've committed, not only in Cuba, but in the rest of the world, especially in Latin America and in Palestine. So wherever you see Israel committing genocide, you must know who is backing them is the U.S. The backers of Israel is the U.S. Wherever there's any fights or instability in the rest of the world, at the center of it all is always the USA. So we must be able to challenge the economic embargoes imposed by the U.S. We must be able to speak in any international platform that we get a chair. We must ask our ministers to ask their counterparts in the global stage that they must start to open up economic trade relations with Cuba and ensure that Cuba, we must begin, in fact, all of us, we must begin to isolate the U.S. If they don't want or they don't have respect of international law, why do we continue to have diplomatic relations with a country that has no respect for international law? You know, students at university who are studying international relations, all along they've been played with or they've been fed lies because we thought there's international laws that must be respected. But the international laws are used against any other country by the US and Israel. International laws do not apply to the US and Israel. And it can't be business as usual that as countries when we meet, we don't call out the US and Israel for their genocidal acts and their economic sabotage that they've imposed on many nations to force people to hunger, to force people to submit under imperialism. So we must begin to relook at these international laws. In fact, we must lobby as many countries as we possibly can to transform the UN. The UN must be transformed, especially the Security Council. It serves no purpose, that Security Council. It serves only to protect the US and Israel and nobody else. You can be killed, you can be butchered. You must ask the people of Palestine. They can be killed anyhow. There will not be consequences for Israel. Why? Because the UN Security Council is not in business to protect anyone else but the US and Israel. And international law does not apply to them. It applies to the rest of us. They are quick to jump and say, these ones, they are breaking international law. These ones, they are killing humanity, and accuse any nation of any kind of accusation but themselves. So we must begin to lobby countries that we need transformation of the UN Security Council. We need transformation of all international laws. They must be binding on all of us. We must be able to hold the US and Israel accountable for the atrocities that they've committed across the globe. So on behalf of the EFF, I want to say, Ambassador Rodriguez, we support Cuba. We are your friends. We'll never abandon you at the sake of inconvenience or convenience. We'll always side with the leftist movement because we're a socialist party. We believe that socialism is going to trump over imperialism in the near future. I thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Mhlongo. Honorable Douglas.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and I want to say thank you to Ambassador Rodriguez for a great presentation. And let me begin by affirming that from our side as MKP, we want to say that we are great supporters of Cuba, that we stand by the Cuban people, especially during this dark time of this embargo and this attack by the West against Cuba and its people. And the genocide and unnecessary suffering of the Cuban people must be highlighted, and MK stands with you. From Umkhonto we Sizwe party side, under President Jacob Zuma's tenure as president both of the ANC and South Africa, Cuba and South African relations were at an all-time high. And under his leadership in the Umkhonto we Sizwe party, we wish to express our solidarity as Umkhonto we Sizwe with the Cuban people and his leadership, and we wish to grow and increase our relations as friends of Cuba both now and in the future. President Zuma visited Cuba in 2010 and met both with President Raul Castro and President Fidel Castro, and he was awarded the Order of José Martí, Cuba's highest honor at the time, and the visit produced a visa waiver agreement for diplomatic and official passport holders and commitments to trade in humanitarian relations between South Africa and China. So as we celebrate this 100-year anniversary of Fidel Castro, MKP is lobbying the GNU in this committee today and other platforms for a radical and immediate increase in financial support to the Cuban people through the ARF mechanism to counteract the American military blockade and embargo by the current dictatorial American regime against the Cuban people. So we need to put our money where our mouth is. We have the ARF budget, and we also have the DIRCO budget, which can be increased, and we can definitely support more the Cuban people, not just by word, but actually by putting our money where our mouth is, Mr. Chair. So instead of just saying we've got a budget and we're just going to consider the RF like it is now, I think there's a need for us to dramatically increase the budget and to dramatically intervene in a deep time of need of the Cuban people. We can't just say we are friends without saying we're going to increase our support financially through this mechanism. Cuba is under relentless attacks of aggression by America and its allies under this administration, which recycled the old Monroe Doctrine into its new Dunroe Doctrine that initially led to the Cuban Missile Crisis, and this year is regurgitated as a new form of neo-colonial military adventurism for American subjugation of the Western Hemisphere, and Cuba in particular, all in the name of resource extraction and subjugation of nations in the Western Hemisphere. So for MKP, the blockade of Cuba is a crime against humanity and is a beginning of what's looking like a genocide by economic means. And as a non-aligned global actor, South Africa has to take action in international courts and UN Security Council should this aggression not be stopped. We can't just say nothing. We have to raise our voice in the platforms that matter. The world practiced discriminatory, selective moral outrage, and the Western media is biased against Cuba, South Africa, Iran, Russia, China, and other progressive nations who are taking ownership of their future, both now and forever. There should not be two sets of justice, Mr. Chair. There should not be just two sets of moral outrage, one for progressive countries and one for Western countries. When they are aggressors, we should call them out. When they are hurting countries like Cuba, we can't remain silent and say they're on the other side of the world. They stood up for us. They paid the price for our freedom. They gave their lives for our people. And we as MK, and I'm sure the ANC and many other progressive organizations like the EFF, we will stand together and we will form a moral majority that will stand behind you and protect you and stand up for you. But it starts here in this committee. We have the power to increase the ARF funds. We have the power to increase projects. And then not just to look at this as the ARF fund. What about the future from here on out? We need to look at projects where we can partner the pharmaceutical industry, trade, where we can look at twinning agreements between your cities, our cities. How do we do economic transformation that uplifts the black majority in South Africa and the Cuban majority on the island as well? But we are in a situation of crisis. Cuba is in a situation of crisis, and when our friends are in crisis, we need to come to their aid, Mr. Chair. So from MK's point of view, we want to commit our support and say we will stand up with you and we will stand up against those who oppress you. Just as much as they stand up against us, we will push back. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Douglas. We will now go to Honorable Chetty. Anything?
Chair, we have a representative from the DA who will give our point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, let me just organize my things here. Chair, thank you for the presentation, and to His Excellency the Ambassador, you're very welcome in the committee. Chair, we know that the ANC and many other political parties have a warm relationship with Cuba, which we respect. But this is not a party political conference, this is Parliament of the Republic. So we are not elected, I certainly am not elected, to clap hands for Fidel Castro, to celebrate political allegiances. I respect that they exist, but I'm not elected to Parliament as the legislative arm of our democracy, of our government, to sit and celebrate this relationship. What I am elected to do is to quantify and look at the value that South Africa gets from its relationship with Cuba. And I think it's important for this committee to quantify that relationship accurately so that we can actually assess it and see if it is deserving of renewal, if it's something that's beneficial, mutually, or exclusively for the South African people, or if it is something that we should look at renegotiating. And I just want to start off by saying in February 2012, South Africa signed a 350 million rand economic aid and credit agreement to help Cuba recover from hurricane damage and to boost bilateral trade. As of 2024, South African exports to Cuba value $4.1 million, which is roughly around 600 million rand. And that in comparison to South Africa's total exports in the same year of around 194 billion rand. So as a percentage of total exports, South Africa's exports to Cuba makes up a mere 0.3%, which is negligible and doesn't necessarily bring any economic benefits to the Republic. Of the imports that we get from Cuba, which amounts to $2.1 million, almost all of it is tobacco products. So we really just rely on Cuba for cigarettes. And if you consider the fact that the 350 million rand economic aid and credit agreement that was granted in 2012 was meant to boost bilateral trade, this has not increased at all over the past decade. And if you consider the inhumane conditions that South Africans experience, which according to Stats South Africa equates to roughly 23 to 28% of our own children suffering from severe food poverty and millions of households experiencing daily hunger. I think that many South Africans would agree that that 350 million rand would be better spent feeding South Africa's children than going into a bilateral trade agreement that has produced nothing since it was granted. Between 2012 and 2022, the ANC government has spent 1.4 billion rand, on agreements with the Cuban government to employ Cuban workers and service providers. This is money that could have been spent on creating job opportunities and alleviating food security issues back home. If we look at defense agreements, Project Tusano, which was the original defense cooperation program with Cuba, generated 1.7 billion rand in irregular expenditure. The Auditor General of South Africa found the program breached the Public Finance Management Act and Treasury procurement rules. The Department of Defense and Military Veterans replaced Tusano with Project Khala this year and says the new program will cut costs by 82.3% over 5 years. That remains to be seen. We still send South African National Defense Force officers to Cuba for training that domestic military academies already provide with full accreditation. The cost to the taxpayer is 28 million rand unnecessarily, since recruits spend their first year not doing any military training, but learning Spanish for the first year. In July 2025, it emerged that a chartered flight costing more than $1.9 million carried more than 200 South African soldiers to Cuba, and this was defended by the department. Again, money that could be better spent on South Africa's needs. On the medical programs, the Nelson Mandela Fidel Castro Medical Training Program has sent South African students to study medicine in Cuba since 1997. We value bilateral relationships, but they must be assessed and reassessed to see whether or not they remain beneficial for the South African public, but more importantly for the taxpayers who spend money on these services. The Gauteng Department of Health spent about 368,000 Rand 24 per student per year on the program, which is 3 times as much as it costs to train the same student at a South African university. 3 times. And according to the professor who leads the academic partnership at the University of the Witwatersrand, it is no longer beneficial. Enrollment has collapsed. Gauteng alone sent 264 students to Cuba in 2019. By 2021, that number had fallen to 25. And it stayed there throughout 2022. The only 2 provinces still maintaining and using this program are Gauteng and the Northwest. Graduates finish about 2 years later than locally trained doctors. They lose 1 year to Spanish lessons before medical training starts. They then need a year of reorientation upon return before they can sit South African final exams. So it costs 3 times as much to train a doctor in Cuba. It takes 2 years longer, and they are not necessarily better equipped to deal with South Africa's medical facilities. Returning students and doctors, as reported, have described isolation, culture shock, and a curriculum built for Cuba's community clinics that does not match South African hospitals. During the COVID-19 lockdown, some students were left stranded on the island with limited government support, and their own families had to send food parcels. The program has produced some prominent alumni, but many still argue that the clinical training does not transfer well to South African conditions. I want to quote a report that came from a number of medical journalists and actually quotes a number of medical professors. Professor Lionel Green Thompson, who's the Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Cape Town, has said that the medical exchange program is rooted in our nostalgic connection with Cuba and its role in our change as a country, but is now out of step with many of the healthcare settings and realities we face in South Africa. Further, Professor Shabir Mahdi, who's the Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences at Wits University, says that the program costs an estimated 3 times more than what it costs to train a student in South Africa. This, he says, is enough reason for a beleaguered health department like Gauteng's to stop sending students to Cuba. He says that across universities, there's been a complete overhaul of the curriculum to be focused on primary healthcare. Students are also getting community exposure as early as first-year training. It is no longer necessary for us to send students to Cuba for this training. So, Chair, in summary, the bottom line we see here is that trade and investment ties are negligible between South Africa and Cuba. Despite hundreds of millions of rands in investment in a bilateral trade relationship, Cuba remains a negligible, no meaningful commercial partner for South Africa and shows no signs of becoming one. Defence cooperation has a track record of irregular spending and duplicates training South Africa's own institutions already offer. The medical training pipeline costs about 3 times the local alternative, takes 2 years longer to produce a qualified doctor, and is now shrinking as provinces lose interest and its own academic leadership questions its value. The relationship survives for political and historical reasons. The trade, investment, defence and healthcare data show little return for the South African taxpayer. And in the context of an over 33% unemployment rate, we have to ask ourselves what benefits are being reaped for the South African taxpayer from this relationship. So, Chair, that's my summary. And as I said, devoid of any party political rhetoric, I'm not here to discuss ideology. I'm not elected to clap hands. But I do want to comment on something that was made from the floor around why South Africa has so many political parties. Because we are a democracy, because we don't all agree, because we have this forum to sit and discuss differing views so that we can have a robust discussion about what is good for the people of South Africa. This is not a forum where we can rubber stamp mechanisms that force South African taxpayers to pay more money for programs and government departments that give them little in return. So that is what we are here to discuss, and that is what we as the DA would like to have tabled and discussed when it comes to this relationship going forward. If it is no longer beneficial for South Africa to have bilateral ties with Cuba, then we need to reassess that relationship. We have no problem with the ANC having, or any other political party, having an ideological relationship with Cuba, but it is not in South Africa's interest, clearly from the data, for this relationship to continue. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Smith. Honorable Lynchfield, you unfortunately had to go out, and we took the honorable member in your absence. And if you have something to say, it's over to you now.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ambassador, for those remarks. And I also thank you, Chair, for your remarks. And thank you to the floor or the House that gave us a lot of input on this important matter. I think, Ambassador, the first thing I want to say is I was in Angola at the time when Cuba was in Angola. So, as Umkhonto weSizwe, our relationship with Cuba is really rooted in what we have seen Cuba do for this region. You did talk about Cuban involvement in saving the revolution in Angola. I think you didn't tell the House that the racist SANDF at the time was halted 200 kilometers from Luanda. Why would you invade a country for simply choosing a different socio-economic system from yours? Is a question that lingers for me. But I think what you also didn't tell the House is that force was going to link with another force that was at the Battle of Kifwandongo, which was 20 kilometers from Luanda, actually. Again, supported by South Africa and Zaire at the time. Well, maybe it's the word I used, but the SADF was a racist defense force. That's why Africans were not in that defense force. So I stand by that word. So I think for me, we have seen Cuba really bending backwards to ensure that Southern Africa riddles itself from colonialism. But I think, again, what's missing in your comments is that it is Russian armaments that actually helped in that battle. That should not be lost again. Because, again, we are told that we should prefer the USA over Russia. Each time we prefer Russia, we are apolitical as Africans in this country. And then I think I want to premise my remarks, Chair, by just a quick response to what was presented here. Whether you view a medical system best depends on how you define medical excellence for us, Umkhonto weSizwe. Because Cuban training is based on primary health care, which is preventative, which is what we need. Why do you want to wait until I'm sick and then we are going to make sure that you draw in the Rockefeller health industry so that I can spend my money giving it to the Rockefeller health industry when it could have been prevented? So you can give me statistics. I mean, everybody can throw statistics around. And you can make statistics to fit the agenda that you are promoting. The fundamental issue is it is globally known that the Cuban health system is based more on prevention than cure. I think which is where the world should be going right now. But we also know it cannot be supported because then we are taking money away from the Rockefeller health industry. I don't even know why I even use health. From the Rockefeller medicine industry, which is why we no longer even train doctors today in the proper way. We train doctors to prescribe. They will tell you, talk to any medical student in South Africa, they will tell you, oh, you think you should take this for this. No. It's called scheduling. From year 2, they are really pulling their hair out of their heads because it's scheduling. You need to know this one is analgesic and this is what I prescribe. This one is this and this one. So we are training doctors really to be merchants of the Rockefeller health industry, for me. And Cuba is doing it differently. So we can't come here and deceive our people who are listening and say there is no longer any need for us to be sending doctors to Cuba. As a matter of fact, I don't know why it took us so long. We should have copied the Cuban health system and implement it here. This, for us, MKP, would be one of the recommendations. We need to start training our health practitioners the way Cuba is training their health practitioners. Notwithstanding that we sit in Gauteng and Cape Town and we think this is the epitome of South Africa. In the rural areas, that's the basic health care that we need, that primary health care. And then, Chair, I also want to draw us to a very important fact here. Capitalism is struggling globally currently, and so is Europe. The benefits of slavery and colonialism have dwindled and are dwindling. Now, for the first time, Europeans themselves are seeing face to face that capitalism is an evil system. If you're old like me, I'm older than you, by the way. I also look good for my age. If you lived in the 20th century, you will know that to turn on your television and you see a protest in Europe was just an anomaly. It wouldn't happen because they were still basking in the glory of what was stolen from Africa. Yeah. Now it's dwindling. Now they are facing this naked system, which is very cruel. Now, I don't want us to sit here and deceive ourselves that we are not facing the Bay of Pigs again, because that's what's happening. Yeah. You see, we call it, a lot of people say, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. No, I just call it the Russia-Ukraine war, because I don't know who invaded each other there. Because the same thing that the US did not want with USSR then to deploy its missiles in Cuba is the same thing they want to do now with Ukraine. They want to accept Ukraine into NATO so they can deploy at the border of Russia. Now, it's the Bay of Pigs all over again. So I just don't want us to lose that as we discuss Cuba. But also, we cannot take away the evil in the long-term planning of America and its allies. See, they are keeping USSR now engaged in Ukraine. They can't supply the oil that Cuba needs as much as they would want because they are fighting a war of defense at their border. And they are not fighting Ukraine, please. They are fighting the Western world because it is USSR and its allies, which is another thing we need to start correcting Africans. There is no US hegemony, there is Western hegemony because Trump is a madman. Europe knows, but don't worry, they still support Trump. If South Africa today were to say we are taking troops to Cuba and we are going to use 40% of our GDP to support Cuba, you will see who will jump first, the UK, France, all the people whose money is running around here to support the US. So it is Western hegemony. So I don't want us to lose that in our discussion also, Chair. Now, it says then for us in Umkhonto weSizwe, you cannot separate the struggle against colonialism from the struggle against capitalism, which is why we shall always face this problem for as long as we are choosing neoliberalism as a socio-economic system. And I think the Cubans are here as a proof. They will tell us better, they can give us a better lecture on that. That despite facing this bully, they've survived thus far, you know, limping, but they've survived. So for me, it says the progressive forces that are in this room, if we want to create a better world, we need to stop being mad people carrying leaking buckets and standing at the taps. We need to address the socio-economic system, which is the mother of all evils globally, and it's the mother of all evils in this country and in Cuba also. Therefore, for us, Chair, as the way forward, we want to ask South Africa to just throw your muscle in BRICS. You know, the Warsaw Pact died. We can't have NATO but have nothing to counter it. Now, me, I speak as a soldier. You can't have NATO but you don't have anything because the Warsaw Pact died. Now, I'm not sure where do we want to take BRICS, but South Africa, you can use your influence to mobilize in BRICS for the solidarity for Cuba. But also long term to ensure that BRICS in the end does become a military pact. We can't have a situation where America can go into any country and abduct a president and do as they like and decide who to install. We think it's Venezuela, tomorrow it's you, tomorrow it's me, tomorrow, I mean, it's the madness of the world in which we live. You can't have genocide in Israel and the world is just watching. It's because they know that after NATO, there is no other counter. They can do as they wish. Therefore, Chair, we would really want to see South Africa play that role in BRICS. We would also want to see South Africa have separate bilaterals with China and Russia on the Cuban issue to see how more Cuba can be assisted. Again, within BRICS, you know the Gulf states have joined. UAE is a full member. Saudi Arabia has joined. They are waiting a ratification. Iran has joined. We also would want to see you engage the Gulf states. If oil is what Cuba needs desperately right now, you do have a BRICS member that produces oil. What can you do as South Africa to leverage on that relationship? There's also 3 countries in this continent that I love so much. Sometimes I will not repeat it outside the confines of this room. Sometimes it's hard for me to say, do I love South Africa as much as I love Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger? Because of what they are doing, which I don't see us doing. They are taking a very strong anti-colonial, anti-neoliberal stance. And they are the only 3 countries thus far who have a defense pact, by the way. Ever since Ghana 1957, Africa's never had a defense pact that says if you attack them, you're attacking us. They are the only 3 countries that have a defense pact currently. So maybe engage them also, take us along, because we've been there. President Zuma's been there. And see what the Alliance of Sahel states, they call themselves IS in French, what they can do. You know, Ambassador Thomas Sankara's office, and I have been blessed to have been in his office, was a bare office. That is one president who really lived, he didn't live large at all. He used the military car, the photo is there. In his office, there was nothing mobile except a table, a telephone, and books. But the wall was lined by revolutionary messages. And Che Guevara and the Cuban Revolution was one of the messages on his wall. So I really do believe that we can mobilize the people of Burkina Faso to understand and see what is happening in Cuba. And I am sure between those 3 countries, we shall get a solidarity, because we need to take this message to the French world. That's the sad thing is in Africa we sit as English speaking, French speaking, Portuguese speaking. So I know in the English speaking countries, because of the role of Cuba in Southern Africa, it is known and we can follow the desperation that Cuba is going through. But we need to take that message to French speaking Africa, and they are the majority, for them to see and know what Cuba has done and why Cuba needs Africa at the moment. But yes, you have our support, and yeah, it is genocide what is happening. I agree with my colleague, and I agree with Honorable Nobile, and I think we need to start framing it as such, Chair, and not say the embargo. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Lynchfield. Oh, okay, Honorable Mhlongo.
Chair, it's a point of order I wanted to raise, but I did not want to disturb Honorable Litchfield. Chair, it's the behavior, we ought to note the behavior of the DA. They just spoke, immediately they are done speaking, they walk out. They don't want to sit and participate in a dialogue. They don't want to listen to inputs of other members or the responses that they will get. We must note that the DA comes here in this very important meeting. They trash down and speak ill of the friends of South Africans, people who supported us during apartheid. Apartheid that was spearheaded by their forefathers and their leaders, the likes of Tony Leon. And then when they are done speaking, they spoke a lot of garbage and then they left. They are not here to stomach our responses to their garbage that they were speaking. It must be noted, Chair, that it's unparliamentary, it's unacceptable. Next time, Chair, they must speak first and we lock the door. They must sit here so that they take the answers that we give to their rubbish that they were speaking here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Honorable Mhlongo. I was going to come to this matter at the end, but I think the next committee meeting, there must be an item we must agree to have. It is that conduct of the DA. So when we review this meeting with His Excellency here, we will have to just have that discussion alone on that conduct, and whether that conduct only reflects what happened in this meeting or is an inherent tendency within the Democratic Alliance to behave in the manner in which they did. So I'll suggest to the honorable members that we come to that matter in the next meeting, because democracy doesn't work like the way they are doing, and where you express your view and then you walk out. It's and you say the taxpayer is paying me for not to clap hands for Fidel, and I'm not here for ideology. When the time comes for you to be explained to what you leave. Yeah, but it's fine. We're meeting again as the committee, so those who will not be here, we will live stream it live, that discussion on this conduct of working out is going to happen. As long as I'm the chairperson of this committee, it's going to happen. I can assure you. Yes. Anything, Honorable Klute? You okay? Honorable Nolumango, anything?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Let me first start by welcoming all the presentations. And this is the Portfolio Committee on International Relations. And here we are able to resolve on matters. So we must take decisions as this committee. Chair, so I would like your summary at the end to reflect some of the proposals that are made by honorable members. Now, Honorable Smith, I think, is a coward. He tells us about what democracy is. Democracy, as you could see here, the majority of us are in unison. He's standing alone on his own. And I wanted to teach him that politics 101, but he ran away. Unfortunately, he will not understand the relations between South Africa and Cuba. The bilateral and political and multilateral relations between SA and Cuba are excellent, underpinned by historical ties forged in common struggle against the apartheid, colonialism, and the oppression. South Africa-Cuba relations were established long ago between the then Liberation Movement, the African National Congress, and the government and Communist Party of Cuba. So after 1994, Cuba was one of the first to offer material and human resources support to South Africa. The success of South Africa's political bilateral and multilateral relations could therefore be measured in the extent of the numerous development and programs, cooperation projects, as well as strong political and social solidarity and support that exists between South Africa and Cuba. It is thus critical that these relations be supported in whatever way possible, especially because South Africa's population still benefits from the SA-Cuban relations. And just recently, we had an oversight in our missions in the Americas, and our mission in Havana was one of them. And we have then gotten first-hand information from the mission in terms of what is happening in Cuba currently. Both our countries maintain a broad framework of over 15 bilateral agreements in areas such as education, science and technology, agriculture, health, housing, water and sanitation, sports and culture. So it's not just the medical field that we always focus on, but there are several bilateral agreements. So cooperation remains particularly active in health, education, human settlements, and public works. Cuba's deployment of medical personnel, teachers, engineers, and technical specialists across South Africa's 8 provinces remains one of the most visible and valued pillars of the bilateral relationship, reinforcing the long-standing tradition of solidarity and practical cooperation between the two countries. So Cuba continues to train South African medical professionals under the Nelson Mandela Fidel Castro Medical Training Program, through which nearly 3,500 doctors have qualified. Notably, South Africa's first black female cardiovascular surgeon received a primary medical degree through this program, and that is commendable. Cuban medical personnel also remain deployed across South Africa, especially in our rural provinces, providing essential services and strengthening provincial health systems. So I would like to just pose the following questions to His Excellency of some of the information that we've received, that the Spanish hotel group, some of the Spanish hotel groups withdrew from Spain. Now, I would have wanted to hear from you, Your Excellency, whether there have been any talks with Spain to ensure that, you know, these Spanish hotels come back to your country, because it assists in the broad or in the main with your tourism sector. So South Africa must therefore continue to consistently advocate in international bodies like the United Nations for the removal of the United States economic, commercial and financial embargo against Cuba. South Africa needs to assist Cuba with humanitarian aid, and that is one of my proposals. We could establish a solidarity fund to assist Cuba. We stand in solidarity with Cuba and must continue to pledge our continued mutual support for each other's economies, growth, development and well-being of our peoples. We must therefore continue to enhance bilateral relations and cooperation in the multilateral arena. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Honorable Nolumango. Ndatemuela, anything?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Chairperson, and greetings once again, His Excellency Rodriguez and Mr. Noriego, the political advisor, and also to recognize all the civil society organizations that are present here, the trade federations that are here, and all the political parties that are part and parcel of this discussion. And also through your discretion, Chair, we also want to applaud that you afforded them an opportunity to also raise their voice in this particular important discussion that we're having with the Cuban ambassador and all the stakeholders. I just want to emphasize to what honorable members have said here in terms of our relationship with Cuba, which is very strategic and very important for us as South Africa and us as the nation. This relationship that we're having with the Cuban people, it comes back to 3 decades now, where we had very progressive historic moments, politically and otherwise. We could not have this democracy that we're having here if it was not the Cuban people who stood side by side with us when it was not fashionable. It was Cuba chair during the COVID-19 that brought all their doctors here in this country. When the offspring of colonialism decide to have amnesia on those particular matters, we get very much worried because we know the impact that the Cuban Revolution have done to us, not only as South Africa, but as an Africa. That the Battle of Cotaconaval in Angola that Honorable Lynchfield spoke about here played a very meaningful role in ensuring that we fought the colonialism in Africa. And we cannot decide now that we must have amnesia because of what the offspring of colonialism think. We will also stood with the Cuban people side by side and will support you. We also support the decision that you are having to ensure that you support Cuba through the African Renaissance and international cooperation funds. We, as the portfolio committee from the African National Congress, we support it fully. And we are saying it must be doubled, that the African Cuban people must ensure that they get support from us. As members have already alluded here, we must have a position as the committee that we are in support of the Cuban people. The embargo that is continued to be imposed by the Western imperialist U.S. Within Cuba, within Havana, it must be said as it is, that it must stop. It is not true that we don't have anything to say. We have a say in terms of what is happening in Havana. We're saying that must stop and the embargo must be uplifted against the people of Cuba. And we must raise our voice as we are doing that in the ground through the people, the Friends of Cuba and many other progressive forces on the ground who are always side by side with the Cuban people to show our support that we are with you. And we are also saying that in this committee that we are going to continue to support you. The relationship that Mandela and Fidel Castro established to ensure that we train our doctors, which our honorable members have already said enough about it. We want it to continue and to double so that our people can be liberated from this particular process that are happening. So we are in support as the African National Congress. We will continue to support Cuba, and we will stand by side with you, as we have already alluded, to ensure that the embargo that is imposed within you and the people of Cuba becomes nothing but a rhetoric that the U.S. want to impose. So I think most of the things, Chair, have been said here. The deployment of the Cuban people here to integrate in our society. We know that in our hospitals and everywhere, we have them assisting our people, making sure that they cure our South African people. So we cannot forget that particular important strategic things that they are doing to our people. So we are with you, Ambassador, and we'll stand with you on the ground. We'll show by action that we support you in everything that we do on the ground. because the most support that is important comes from these civil society organizations that are here. And they've already raised their voice in terms of the support that they are giving you and how much they will want us as Parliament to also play our role to ensure that the voice is heard even in Havana, that the Parliament of South Africa, the Portfolio Committee of International Relations is in support, and we want to say to US they must stop what they are doing to the people of Cuba. The people of Cuba also deserve humanitarian aid. There must not be blockade in the people who wants to assist Cuba. We are saying to the people of Cuba, what they are going through today is our pain, and we are with them. So that is my submission, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Honorable Muela. We did get your apology, Honorable Member, that you'll slightly arrive late, but I'm sure you were able to follow a bit of the discussion. So I'm sure you'll be able to at least say something.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Over to you.
His Excellency Fakri and political analyst Mr. Nadriga, and also to our committee members on the International Portfolio Committee. It is an honor and pleasure to have you here today with your presentation, and you're most welcome to express yourselves in a way that seeks support of South African International Relations Committee as well as DIRCO. So to our DIRCO members as well, thank you for the stance we're taking in terms of ensuring that we're in solidarity with Cuba. Let me make it openly clear that I myself, and I'm sure most of our members of the International Committee here, I'm extremely proud when you hear the submissions made by and large in support of Cuba. And it makes me a pure patriotic South African, as much as you may have some small sentiments against Cuba. It means that by and large you have the support of our South African International Committee under our very competent chairperson, Honorable Supra, and I'm sure that he will lead this committee in such a way that will show total support for Cuba. We are always in solidarity, considering our apartheid that we've been through as South Africans, and Cuba has been always a support of our South African history, and it's a well-known fact. I must commend many of the honorable members in the International Committee that has submitted statements in support of Cuba. I don't want to repeat it. I think most of it I'm covered with. And as I said, I'm very, very proud of their submissions in support of Cuba. By and large, from most of us, it is loud and clear that we support Cuba, we're in solidarity with Cuba, and we call for the embargo to be lifted. So be rest assured that you are our brothers, and we will support you tooth and nail. Thank you so much, and I'm from the Al Jamaa Party. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Your Excellency. This is Honorable Musa from Al Jamaa. Thank you very much, Honorable Musa. Honorable Lynchfield.
I'm so sorry to do this, Chair. I am old, so sometimes I forget words. The word I was looking for is nutrition. We don't include nutrition as a subject in training our doctors. Can you imagine that? So you can't talk to your doctor about diet. You can only talk to them about the tablet. And for me, because this was elaborated and repeated so many times, for me it is where the Cuban doctor training comes in, and which is why it's preventative. Because I like the saying that says, let your food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. And that's exactly where Cuba is rooted. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, and I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Thanks, Honorable Lynchfield Chabalala. Derko, I don't know your sequence. If you want to make comments, it's really up to you. I don't know who comes first. Your Excellency Bona.
Good day, Honorable Chair and honorable members. Just some clarification first, whether we are responding to questions or we are giving our presentation.
Both. I thought, I mean, we, as a committee, we know exactly your presentation on ARF. We have approved it on so many occasions. So today, it's just that some people have taken their ears away. It was about to bring it home, this ARF thing, in the context of our relations with Cuba, such that it answers the central question, whether it's still necessary to have ARF supporting the people of Cuba. In brief, that's that. The rest of the things you can leave them. We are in full support of of the ARF. We support the department in that approach. Amongst us, there's only 0.5 to convince. Otherwise, so 99.99% agrees with what the ARF is doing. So we can just applaud you. So that's what I'm saying. You don't need to go to town. Really, we are with you. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, members of the Committee Secretariat, His Excellency Ambassador Rodriguez, members of political organizations and civil society organizations here present, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Minister, Deputy Minister DG, I wish to thank you for the opportunity for us to brief the Committee on International Relations and Cooperation on the state of South Africa-Cuba bilateral relations. South Africa and Cuba continue to enjoy a strategic partnership founded on Cuba's unwavering support for South Africa's liberation struggle and strengthened by our shared values of international solidarity, sovereignty, social and economic justice, South-South cooperation, multilateralism, and respect for international law. This strategic partnership, as was mentioned by His Excellency, was forged during the difficult times of South Africa's struggle against apartheid and colonialism. And of course, we remember the massive sacrifices that Cuba made, especially in the liberation of Southern Africa, not just South Africa. And of course, we fully endorse the ambassador's emphasis on the Battle of Kutokona Valley that turned the tide for the liberation struggle in Southern Africa, after which we saw independence in Namibia, followed by South Africa. So this shared history continues to underpin the strong bonds of friendship, solidarity, and strategic partnership between our countries. Now, since the establishment of diplomatic relations in 1994, the partnership has evolved into a broader development-oriented relationship that covers a wide scope, as was elaborated by the ambassador across the number of sectors, you know, including, of course, one of the premium cooperation programs, our health cooperation, which now is going beyond just the exchange of training of medical doctors and the deployment of Cuban medical practitioners in South Africa. We are moving now to a mutually beneficial investment and technical cooperation partnership focusing on the biopharmaceutical sector so that we can maximize our complementarities in terms of our capabilities in research, in product development, in commercialization of biopharmaceuticals products. And this is a project that currently we're working on between us, Department of Science and Technology, Ministry of Science in Cuba, and relevant institutions in South Africa, such as the Technology and Innovation Agency under the Department of Science and Technology, as well as Bio-Cuba Pharma in Cuba. So beyond the training of medical professionals, now the partnership is now beginning also to contribute to our priorities in terms of our industrial policy, because the biopharmaceutical sector is one of the priority sectors in our industrial policy. And of course, this partnership will also help to ramp up also our trade, you know, in terms of these high value pharmaceutical products, and answer the question that the continent has also been busy with about developing the continent's capacity to produce its own medicines and vaccines. So that talks to also the richness of the partnership beyond the areas that are well known. So I will not go into detail, but I will want to defer to my sister to talk more on the ARF. But before I sit, I will just respond to a question about South Africa, what South Africa is doing to support Cuba, to ensure that Cuba survives. What was elaborated by the Honorable Chair, by His Excellency the Ambassador, in terms of our sectoral cooperation and the concept of a developmental partnership that I highlighted, it talks to that. Politically, our solidarity with Cuba in terms of our bilateral engagements. One of the honorable members asked us to put the matter on the agenda of our bilateral meetings. We consistently do that, not only for Cuba, but also for the people of Palestine, Western Sahara, and so on and so forth. At a regional level also, we continue as part of the broader African continent, in the G77 plus China, in the non-aligned movement, in BRICS, and at the UN. And consistently, South Africa has championed the UN General Assembly resolution, annual resolution, calling on the lifting of the economic, commercial, and financial embargo against Cuba, and calling also for the removal of Cuba from the US's, declaration of Cuba as a sponsor of terrorism. So this is our voice, working with Cuba and other like-minded countries to continue to champion the cause of Cuba, because the cause of Cuba is also our cause too. So that is in response to the question of what we are doing. We can talk about that some more at some point, but through you, Honorable Chair, if I may, I would like to defer to my colleague to talk to the Africa Renaissance Fund and other areas that might be of interest. I thank you.
Good afternoon, honorable members. Thank you, Ambassador Bona, Honorable Chair, and His Excellency, the Ambassador of Cuba. Honorable members, it is an honor for the African Renaissance Fund to come and engage the Portfolio Committee on the cooperation framework which we have with Cuba. I will structure my discussions around maybe giving the committee some background on the historic aid assistance. This is one of the aid assistance that has been successful in terms of implementation. And one needs to appreciate the Ambassador of Cuba for being instrumental and accessible to the ARF as we delivered this aid assistance. We are an entity of government listed in the PFMA as a Schedule 3, governed by the ARF Act 51 of 2000. Our mandate, just to touch on it, is that we have an international mandate which is to enhance cooperation between South Africa and other countries, particularly supporting foreign policy objectives. And our strategic objectives, which I want to dwell on for the purpose of this discussion, is humanitarian aid and socio-economic development. The aid assistance that was afforded to Cuba particularly aligned to this too. And it's quite a pleasure to be engaging the committee when actually the impact assessment on this aid assistance was finalized by the independent service provider who has rated, but I will touch on that before I close. The aid assistance was structured into 3 facilities back in 2012, just to address some of the comments from the honorable members. What is not coming out clearly, Honorable Chair, is that this 350 million, 210 was a credit facility. And let me present to the committee that the government of Cuba has managed to repay this with only 1 installment that is outstanding. And we also appreciate that the first tranche of this 210 million was paid in 2 installments, and we had the 140 million, which was also paid as scheduled. So, and one needs to also appreciate that this is one of the projects that benefited both South Africa and Cuba. Why am I saying that to the committee? I'm saying that while I reflect on the key benefits. We afforded this credit facility, but the goods were sourced in South Africa. So firstly, we acknowledge that one of the key benefits was solidarity. And secondly, we acknowledge the food security provisions. As these goods and items were sourced in South Africa, jobs were created in South Africa, and jobs were further created in Cuba, and there was that export. Hence, our colleagues from the DTIC, which is who become our most partners, have said trade has improved because of this economic package. The goods were certified for local content, and this was also reported under the trade aspect, respectively. But while we touch on that, we are also cognizant that we've had some challenges, but however, it's challenges that we reflect on as a learning tool. Why are we saying that? The measuring criteria from the African Renaissance Fund to say, out of this economic package, what have we achieved? There's still a lot of learning on how we need to quantify, but the benefits have been quite significant. Hence, some of the reported outcomes might not align to the work that was done through this African Renaissance Fund. But we also acknowledge the delays with implementation. We are an entity that is aligned to the PFMA, which means that compliance requirements are quite prevalent to the work that we do. We have to observe year-end closure. We have to observe the audit process to be finalized. As we speak, we just finalize our audit process, and that it will only, the audit report from that is unlocking discussions that we need to have with Treasury from this month on how we look and implement the plans that South Africa has for Cuba. And what we also need to highlight is that this credit facility was also charged at an interest of 4%. So there is 12 million that was accrued in interest. So while you reflect, you also take into account that there was also some generation of revenue, and which was also paid back. And as we approach the National Treasury, this is one of the key pillars and the key discussions that will be advancing our request going into the next tranches. As I've articulated earlier, impact assessment was concluded on the Cuba economic package, and it was rated high amongst other projects that the ARF has contributed to the continent and other countries. But why it was rated high, it's because it was aligned to the foreign policy objectives for South Africa It was also aligned to the ARF the ARF strategic objectives, but further than that, it impacted and benefited to the secondary impact, which is revenue generation. This means that yes, we have funded and assisted Cuba, but however, the flow of the economic benefits went back into the South African economy. Chair, let me reflect as I approach closure to say, where to from here? We have had discussions with His Excellency the Ambassador to say what are the plans of the ARF, and we appreciate the support from the honorable members in terms of the budget. We have received approval for 52 million for humanitarian aid, which is urgent, which we need to start discussing with Treasury, but however, approval has been granted on how we implement. This is an aid assistance that comes after the hurricane national disasters that happened in 24-25, and we are hoping that we will be able to implement this speedily so that we respond to the urgent need on the ground. Secondly, in our discussion, we are saying the economic package has been a successful story. Why not replicate it? Hence, we are going to be approaching National Treasury with a further 200 million that will be coming on the retention of surplus that we want to recommit. Let us say we serve as a development agency for South Africa, but we are a development agency that has advanced credit facility only to government of Cuba. As we do that, we learn on how to do our contracting process, and we're saying we have learned on how to structure. The support that we will need is to be from other portfolios like the National Treasury, the Department of Justice, to acknowledge the relevance and the agency of the matter and support the fund as we implement this. The submission will be made to the National Treasury for the 200 million. It has been recommended by the ARF Advisory Committee. Now it needs to go through the ministers and therefore then will be supported by the Minister of Finance for implementation. But while we do the work of the ARF, we say we need to ensure that we comply with the ARF Act, which means for all the projects, concurrence will be sought. And also, we will also implement the agreement process that is supported by our legal team. And lastly, in our discussion with Ambassador of Cuba, they said they have also noted the work that the ARF does on the continent, particularly in the African continent. And there is possible talks on partnerships on how we can partner with the doctors so that we can support the fund with also the technical skills. What that means, it means that where we have health projects, for example, we'll be able to partner in advance and take the doctors who will assist us in implementing this for the betterment of the African continent. Chairperson, I submit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sampo and Excellency Bona, for that that explanation. Some ears are not here, so they would have heard that from a financial empirical point of view, you want to make a proposal to Treasury to increase the amount because it's also beneficial to South Africa. Now, unfortunately, those years are not here, so they will continue to hold the same view which they held before they staged the walkout. It's unfortunate, but as I said, we will return to this matter. Just before I give you, Ambassador, so that after you have responded, I give a way forward and we close. There was a specific question on the lessons learned 20 years ago from Cuba and how we sort of replicated that in the country. And the Chair of Kwasati was saying, you as a former premier. So I'm going to suggest, Chair, that you make time, maybe with the ANC here and other parties that may be interested, to call me to some gathering, which must take about 3 hours or so that I can explain in detail. But just in summary, one of the things which was part of the vision was rebranding, repositioning, and renewal, RRR. So when I was premier, I said we are now embarking on rebranding, repositioning, and renewal of the province. And one of the things we looked at practically, having learned from the Cuban people on CDRs, Community Defenders of the Revolution, I took a decision to put under the Premier's office EPWP, CDW, health workers, what is it called? Community health workers, all of them, the Ws, right? And I said they need to be congregated under the Premier's office, because when you go to the Constitution of the Republic, there's a clause there that says that President and Premiers are responsible for performance monitoring and evaluation. But when you look at the entire state machinery, you don't have systems for performance monitoring and evaluation. They don't exist until today, right? 32 years. So to respond to that question in the Constitution, I borrowed the lessons from Cuba, and I met with the Minister of Intelligence. And I said to him then, we are going to have in our communities, street by street, village by village, people who are going to be in the employ of the state. And one of their responsibilities, for instance, is to deal with crime, which means every tavern, every area where people congregate or they work, you will have had people who are working with the state to collect and transmit information, and they're going to link with the intelligence, with the police, and with the National Defense Force, including counterintelligence, so that the drug cartels, we can easily, for instance, deal with them. If there are people who are going to plan to do something to state-owned assets, you'll know in advance what is good. So it's an early warning system. On the service delivery side, these CDRs who are locally based will have been in every street. And I said to them, as a premier, we must use technology so that on a daily basis, 3 o'clock, I get a report on every township and every village, because we will have deployed people with gadgets in every village, every township, in every street, to report on what happened in your street today, on everything. So that information then comes to the Premier's office. We do decoding and we do intervention. Where we need to do disruption, we do disruption to keep order. So that was the vision. So all this problem that we have now about tax shops, ownership, this and that, distribution of drugs, and we would have dealt with that problem, including ensuring that every project of government, daily, 3 o'clock, the Premier receives a report, them using their gadgets to report. Whatever project we have on the ground is reported on a daily basis. Because there's a weakness in the PFMA, where people do malicious compliance. The PFMA says, you report through the quarterly report and annual report. It means if you're a president or you're a premier, you get 5 reports. It's quarterly, which is 4, and then the annual report. You get 5 reports. The rest is just frustration of people writing to you and so on. But legally, based on the PFMA, you get 5 reports, and it's reactive action. So we wanted to change that to become proactive with the lessons learned from the CDRs. As I said, we had started the process to introduce community, not community defenders of the revolution, but frontline troopers, revolutionary frontline troopers who are going to be paid by the state. So there would have been order had we implemented that system. And using the same system to shift the economy in the agricultural sector from over-concentration in white hands. The intention was then to make sure that you develop a system where all your farmers, black, assisted by the government, and we intended to establish a state bank, which was just going to help our farmers. this massive number of volunteers would have been in the farms to make sure that they work, and you simply take them as EPWPs so that the question doesn't arise, why was it not competitive, they did not apply, and so on. And then you kill unemployment. Minister Tito Mboweni of Finance, when he was alive, I said to him, and may his soul rest in peace, can we please stop giving individuals the tenders on school nutrition? And he said, what must we do, Premier? I said to him, Minister, look at the total number of classrooms in South Africa. It's over 40,000 classrooms. And I said to him, for me, that's over 40,000 entrepreneurs. If we were to give each entrepreneur a classroom. So what do you do in a classroom? These gadgets is you who support the software, the hardware, the training, the maintenance, in the classroom, the food, nutrition, the books, learner support material, transport, airtime, data, everything in a classroom. So those 40 kids are your market. And as an entrepreneur, you grow. So unfortunately, our government still decided to give individuals the entire school nutrition program and other amenities which must be done in the school. So those lessons were from how the Cubans and the Chinese approached matters of development and keeping order in society and so on. But if you call me, Chairman, sometime to Western Cape here, I will elaborate more on this matter. I'm doing a foundation now which is going to drill deeper into this matter, how we must adopt more or less the Chinese model of economic empowerment from the periphery to the center, instead of hoping trickle down can work, which has not worked in the last 30 years. So that's some of the things I thought I need to do rather through my foundation, because in government is very, very difficult. So those are my responses to what did we do. So by now you'll be having in the Cape Flats those people in the streets making sure that what is happening in the Cape Flats here doesn't happen. That's why we've got soldiers, but the problem is not stopping. It's because the solution is not directly linked to the diagnosis which was done. So you'll continue to have people being killed because we don't have in every street people that we have entrusted with the responsibility to ensure that there's order in every street, in every flat, and so on. So yeah, preventative approach in keeping security, like Honorable Lynchfield was saying, preventative approach with regard to health care. And she's right that if you maintain the status quo in as far as the healthcare is concerned, it's just to make this medical conglomerates more and more richer. That is what is going to happen. And we are not even told, why do you have black people who still reach 105 years, 110? There's no research done why, when they are not using these things which are being used, but they live longer, which means we have a solution, but because it doesn't favor the growth of the capitalist system in South Africa, it's not going to be used. It's not going to be used so that you eat tablets and the tablets have got side effects and they don't tell you the full story about the side effects. That is what happens, right? And then you become a perpetual contributor to medical aid. Then you are a perpetual contributor again to the cycle of forever getting sick. That's the problem we have. And one thing I was going to say to Honorable Smith about the ideology is that if there's a problem with ideology, why do they think the capitalist system is not an ideology? Because it's ideological. It's how you use resources at your disposal to advance your strategic objective. And the capitalist system is about accumulation, 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 accumulation. The socialist system is the opposite, right? And that is ideological. That is why he was able to go to the best schools at his young age in South Africa. And us, the black people, we couldn't go to the best schools. Some of us are products of the Bantu education system, which was an extension of the capitalist system. When he is not a product of the Bantu education system at all. We were forced to learn their language, right, at school. So you first have Ame Motswana. I have to think in Setswana first, and then in my head, translate that to English or Afrikaans and be able to express myself. When they did not have to go through that barrier. So you think in Afrikaans, you say in Afrikaans. When you must still think in Zulu, Xhosa, Tswana, Tswana, Sesotho, and so on, and then go to English or Afrikaans for the benefit of the colonizer. But because there's memory lapse over time, we will have honorable members like Honorable Smith who say no, it was not ideological. When it was ideological. I'm now giving over to you, Your Excellency.
No, thanks a lot. I think we can all agree that this has been a wonderful exchange, a very frank exchange, a very meaningful exchange, and that I'm sure it will have a direct impact on the development of South Africa and Cuba relations. As some of the members have said, we have had a very close relation with Parliament of South Africa for many, many years. Specifically the portfolio of international relations. Very recently we had a very good exchange. So we are very appreciative of the opportunity for us to come and discuss Cuba at this level. This is also part of saving Cuba. This is also part of helping our nation survive the aggression of the US. When we look at and it has been discussed today, what can we do? There's always many things that many people can do in their own space. You cannot ask someone to overlap his own area and do things that are not at their level or at their moment. Here we have very diverse group of people, and they're all doing something for Cuba in their own space. And we are very appreciative of that. We've got the trade unions, which have always had an excellent relation with Cuba. They have had a direct impact, material impact, but also very concrete declaratory actions for Cuba. We have the doctors graduated from Cuba, which all of them are distributed all over the country, and they carry the word of Cuba every time they have a patient, every time they have a Cuban doctor working with them. They work very in unison, and I'm sure that the level of preparation of these doctors, it's immense, and they're being able to provide for South African population. But also we have the political parties, and if there is something that we can see today is unity in a sense of providing support to Cuba and backing and acknowledging the support that Cuba has done. I think that is a very strong point that we always have to carry around, that most of the vast majority of political parties in South Africa are appreciative of Cuba and are in support of coming together to support Cuba at any given point. And saying that, of course, this committee is essential in doing that one, because the South African Parliament, of course, it's a leading entity regionally, internationally. And we would, of course, like to see further actions at parliament level regarding Cuba, be it the approval of laws that pertain to Cuba, or the approval and swift passing of measures that contribute directly to the development of Cuba-South Africa relations, be it also declarations specifically about Cuba and rejecting what we've been talking about. I think any issue that comes to the table in regarding Cuba would have a wide support, and that is also very important. That we see that it backs government action in terms of knowing that the people of South Africa, represented in Parliament, are with Cuba and are able to provide assistance to Cuba. So with that one, we are very happy with those. But there is also a material side to the support that Cuba needs nowadays. We have said very clearly, and I said it in my intervention, Cuba is not looking for handouts. Cuba just wants a chance to develop with its international partners. South Africa has helped in that sense. And I'm very happy that we've had the intervention by the ARF and Ambassador Bona regarding that one, because they have been instrumental in that one. As Ms. Sempo was explaining, most of those credit facilities for Cuba were done through South African companies, through South African products. And that was a direct impact on Cuba development. And it's a very strong point to show that we are trusted partners. We are not here to ask for money. We are not here to ask for handouts. We want to be partners in beneficial programs. Ambassador Bona touched on one which is essential, and I think is very, very easy and quick to implement. And it's Cuba's strength in the biotechnological sector. We have brands, we have know-how, we have patents of many different production facilities for vaccines, for medicines, that we are very able to provide technological transfer to South Africa, to South African entities, local entities, be it whichever is able to provide that cooperation with us. So that one is a concrete that we are already discussing, as Ambassador Bona said, that we're looking to push forward in the near future. But also there is the humanitarian side of it, and we are very glad that there is a final push to have this humanitarian aid coming from the ARF. We have been discussing very clearly about it, and we hope that it really comes through. I hope you all got the line of support with the other committees in Parliament to try to push it forward and move it swiftly, because today there is an urgency in Cuba. We are not in a moment that we can wait. It's time that we need action, real action regarding that one. So just to comment very quickly on some of the questions or issues raised, there was one about the BRICS relation with Cuba. Cuba has become a partner of the BRICS group. And there is a lot of, the BRICS is expanding. And most of the countries within BRICS have had a long-time relation with Cuba. I can say very clearly that countries like Russia and China have been instrumental in the survival of Cuba in the last 8 months. Especially Russia, which of course was able to break that fuel blockade by sending a ship. But as the honorable member said, they have their own internal issues that they have to deal with. We are very appreciative of every country's position in its domestic arena, in its international projection. So we are very appreciative of whatever efforts every country can do. But you always see Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia discussing the Cuba issue. You always see the president always raising the issue in different international arenas. You get like countries like China, we're talking about the BRICS members. With China, there has been an exponential humanitarian assistance in terms of providing, I can't say the number because it's all those megawatts and whatever, it's just huge, the amount of solar panel systems that the Chinese government and private entities have also sent to Cuba to try to diminish our dependency on fuel oils, which we don't have, and depend more on what we have and nobody can block, which is the sun. So in the terms of concrete actions, China has been there for that one. So, of course, BRICS is a space in which we can all work. There are also banks and funds associated to that mechanism that we can also try to explore. And regarding the Spanish companies from the tourism sector, yes, we've had, I mean, remember that Cuba, when we had the Periodo Especial, which is the special period when the Soviet Union disappeared, and Cuba, which was part of that system, was left alone in its commerce. We had a huge crisis, and we implemented the opening up of the tourism sector. And we started partnering with international companies who were very well versed in the tourism industry. And most of them were Spanish companies, like Meliá hotels, like Iberostar hotels, and a number of other chains from Spain and other European countries, and Canadian also. And they started to also partner with Cuban companies in order to develop the tourism sector, which you know from most of you or all of you that have been to Cuba, tourism sector in Cuba is huge. The Sun and Beach area is monumental, and they were able to assist Cuba in providing that infrastructure. But that also changed with the years. As we had the infrastructure, they also provided a lot of skills in managing the tourism sector. So most of our hotels in Cuba are usually joint ventures between those companies and Cuban companies who mostly own the infrastructure, and the foreign company manages the infrastructure and the service provider. Now, due to the current situation and the threats by the American government, especially Trump, on countries, but also and especially on private companies, to halt their relations within the US if they continue providing services or doing business with Cuba. And then that has provoked that, for example, a company like Meliá, who has been 30 years in Cuba, has said, no, we need to take a step back, and they left the 32 hotels they had in Cuba for good, at least for now, until a better moment comes to life. So all those hotels, all that tourism sector, which is at a standstill, because also travelers are not going to Cuba, given the situation that there is with the fuel shortages and the airlines. So the hotels are now in our hands. We manage them, but we do not have, we are lacking the international support, especially in terms of marketing and bringing people actually with their systems to our hotels. So if you look at it, it's also part of that very surgical approach to Cuba. Let's cut off exactly what they need. Let's go to a tourism sector. Let's go to a financial sector. Did you know that Visa and MasterCard are no longer able to be used in Cuba? It's hilarious. I mean, nobody travels with cash nowadays. But if you go to Cuba now with your bank card from South Africa, and it's a Visa or MasterCard, you will not be able to swipe in Cuba because of the sanctions. So how can you ask a traveler to travel to Cuba with a pack of US dollars in the luggage? So these are type of things that they are looking forward to cutting off and suffocating the main areas from which Cuba beneficiates. And when we say tourism, tourism are thousands and thousands of jobs lost. It's thousands of families that are suffering from it. And this is not an issue that, because always, usually the government of the US and Marco Rubio and Trump, they always say they are targeting government, they're targeting government officials, but in reality, it's the suffocation of the Cuban population which has been happening, and it's the final objective, because they are trying to entice a rebellion, internal rebellion in Cuba, to down with the government, which is completely illegal, which is completely out of international norms. But as we said, the days we live in are not very enticing to world order. But having said that, we look forward to engaging. I am very happy that we have our friends from Focus present here. I would ask all of you to support Focus, to come close to them. They have years of experience regarding Cuba. They have years of connections with the people of Cuba, not with the government, not with specific entities, but with the people of Cuba. They travel, they carry medicines in their bags when they go to Cuba. I wish that every single one of the members of parliament can have a close relation. I know they have, but they have a better relation with Focus in Cape Town, which is one of the main places where they have activities, but all around South Africa as well. And there are other organizations that are springing up to support Cuba. Doctors for Cuba, for South Africa is one of them. And there are other entities that are focusing on material support for Cuba. So any of these organizations will gladly receive the support of the members of this House. So thank you very much. We are very happy for this one, and we hope it's not the last one. Thanks.
Thanks, Your Excellency. Way forward, honorable members. One, okay, let me not mention them. We agree that South Africa must continue to pursue the matter of Cuba at the United Nations levels. Secondly, that South Africa must work with like-minded countries to make sure that the African Union also continues to pay attention to matters of Cuba. Thirdly, that South Africa continues to use BRICS platform to pursue this particular matter of the support for Cuba. There's also a proposal that as Parliament we will have to try and suggest some kind of a debate in Parliament which will result in a resolution by the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa on solidarity with Cuba. There's also a suggestion, which I think we are agreeing to, that because we work with countries like China, which manufacture solar systems and so on, we must work with them to intensify the program to ameliorate the problem of energy supply in Cuba. The next one is on medical supplies, that we try to do everything possible with those who are going to be in solidarity with us in Cuba to assist with medical supplies. We agree with the department that we increase the ARF allocation. And maybe we must just add that because Cuba is now in a disparate situation, we might want to suggest to Treasury that we make a motivation for having the interest of 12%. Remember, we're charging Cuba 12%, and if we can give the other 6% as a grant to Cuba. What we just need is a decision of cabinet to say no longer 12 but 6, and it will be evaluated on an annual basis or something like that. The most ideal would have been to write it off completely, but under the circumstances of GNU and all those things, we might have to be, yeah. And then I want to suggest to those who are in focus that South Africa has got 4,488 wards. What we must do is to make sure that at least we have one person which will be part of focus matters in every ward. Now, this 4,488 people per ward is one per ward for focus. We will see how we make use of them to do massive grassroots mobilization of anything, because we'll have presence of focus in every ward in South Africa. So we can work together to achieve that objective. There's a proposal that we work with all institutions, including institutions of higher learning, for them to come on board on some of these matters. I also want to suggest that as MPs, we start a process of MPs for solidarity with Cuba. And we do it within, it starts here in this committee. And then we mobilize that through the African continent, so that all MPs who are progressive must be in solidarity with Cuba. And after the continent, then we do BRICS. so that all MPs individually, we can form that body, which will in future not only deal with Cuba, but any other future challenge that we will come across. Is it agreed to, honorable members? Okay, that's excellent. I saw former Minister of International Relations in Cuba yesterday, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. I'm going to suggest to her, with tacit approval from the committee, that it's good that she went to Cuba yesterday, but that in addition to that, as the former Minister of International Relations for South Africa and the chair of the AU, she must mobilize all the formers, former ambassadors, consulate generals, former ministers, former this, former that, in the entire continent, and form a body that will be in solidarity with the plight of the people of Cuba. She can lead that campaign of all the former this, former that, who must help the people of Cuba. Later, we will also include Palestine, Western Sahara, and all other people who are still casualties of the Western value system onslaught. So I think that's our way forward. I also want to suggest, honorable members, that because Nelson Mandela and El Commandant Fidel signed the agreement on the 11th of May, 1996, and May is Africa Month, that we dedicate that day. It becomes an annual, some kind of an event where we dedicate that day to the struggles of the people of Cuba and solidarity as Africans, the entire Africa, not just South Africa, with them, led by South Africa. And we do it during Africa Month, so that we push the African agenda to include the plight of the people of Cuba. Agreed? I want to take this opportunity, Your Excellency, Comrade Rodriguez, to thank you for coming to the committee, not for the first time. I made a mistake by saying it's for the first time. This is the second. The first, some of us were not there. We were held up somewhere. So thank you very much for coming here, and your team. Never relent, because the struggle for the triumph of the revolution of the people of Cuba and the rest of progressive forces in the world, we know it's inherently protracted. It's not an easy struggle. So we must never relent. We must never give up that struggle. It has to continue under all circumstances. And I want to thank the honorable members who were here from the beginning and the end. I don't want to say I thank members for coming to the meeting. I want to thank members who were here from the beginning to the end, honorable members, and for supporting the cause of our people. All political organizations that are here, Focus, trade unions that are here, especially COSATU, we really, really want to thank you. The First Nation, I hope one day we can use an opportunity here in Parliament to petition Parliament. That statue of Louis Botha, there's a statue here of Louis Botha. That statue, in my view, I told Honorable Douglas one day, it has to be replaced maybe with our leader of the people, Auchimadu, because he led the struggle here. You can discuss it on your own and decide, but as long as Louis Botha is not there, right, make a petition. They called him the, I don't know why they decided to call him the strandloper. He read the strandloper.
Yeah, he read the strandloper.
Yeah,
sorry.
the strandloper, yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of Louis Botha, because when you come to Parliament here, the first sign that you come across. Not even Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela's head is there at the back, somewhere there, is Louis Botha. And we know what people like Louis Botha have done in this country. So thank you for coming. Some of us are descendants of the First Nation. We get our strength when we see you amongst us. The staff, for making sure that our meeting go well today. Thank you very much. The media which was following the proceedings, thank you very much for making sure that this is reported and is not kept in silence. I've been requested to ask honorable members and yourself, Your Excellency, that we proceed to the building next door. What is it called? NCOP building. We proceed to that building, and after proceeding to that building, lunch is at Max Restaurant.
No, Chair.
Where?
The lunch will be served at Old Assembly, Chair, on that side.
Okay.
When we go to that side
We'll follow you.
Yes. We'll
Yes.
Go for
Lunch will be at, is it for everybody?
For everybody, Chair.
Okay. Everybody is invited for lunch in the next building. Thank you very much.
Chair, let me just, sorry,
Okay,
sorry for breaking protocol. I just want to recognize your leadership today of this important meeting for us, especially on such an important day for Cuba, which is the 100th anniversary of Fidel Castro tomorrow. And we wanted to present you, and of course for the Portfolio Committee on International Relations, this book on Fidel for your safekeeping.
Let's go this side. Which one, ma'am?
Today is International Youth Day.
Oh, yeah.
When they are mentioned, today is International Youth Day.
Yes.
Me and you, we don't say anything.
Huh?
Then say send it out to the elders.
Don't leave the struggle of the Cuban people.
Long live! You think Diana has sold out? We have sold out to the elders.